of the Finance Committee for November 8th, 2000. I have the mic on. 2021. Is mic on now? I think we have some technical difficulties here.
Is John's mic working?
Testing. Nope, none of them will work.
Maybe none of the mics work.
Testing, testing. Oh, none of them will work. Let me go tell them. They're transmitting.
Should I yell?
Hello?
You can, Vaughn, but
I guess it's working. We just can't hear it in here.
No, I told him to put the speakers on. But,
Oh.
yeah, but he doesn't do it. If everybody speaks loud, then we could hear each other. But the microphones are gonna. Everybody will hear us on TV, but we won't hear each other unless we speak up.
The mics are on.
So that's how it'll be.
They don't put it on out here because it bothers Zoom meetings. They said, we're not doing the Zoom meeting, we're live. So I don't know if they're going to treat
Okay, there we go. Hey.
There we go.
Hey. Call to order a meeting of the Finance Committee for November 8th, 2021.
Why is he talking so loud? All right, I got the agenda.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which I stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to get right to it. We're going to have some discussion and votes on the articles. We'll start with Article 5, I guess. I think it was the first thing that we heard. We have any discussion or questions on Article 5?
That's fine with me. Paper.
I could give it.
Gracias.
Does everyone want to do Article 5 first? Does it make a difference? I was going to go in the order we heard them in. Okay, Article 5 is, do we have any comments on this, questions, any debate on this, Article 5?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, just one thing I'd like to mention before we do start doing any votes. It was quite evident last Thursday and Wednesday that there are a number of warrants floating around out there. And even the one that was handed to Mr. Lurie that night, that it was the latest, it still didn't have what we were told was in the one the town manager was using. So I just caution you on any recommendation we make. I'd be hard-pressed to say is written in the warrant since we don't have the warrant. So just keep that in mind. We may have to be very cautious with how we word our recommendations, because in my opinion, we don't have a warrant in front of us, a final warrant. She said they were still working on it the other day. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a quick announcement. We are being broadcast on SMAC, being recorded for broadcast later, and being broadcast live now. Yes, Diane?
Because of what Mr. Antonino said, does anybody have a copy of the warrant that Dr. Grimm had the other night with all the figures? And because I never saw that either.
We distributed the warrant that we had a full, there were a lot of drafts that were being sent out. So I had Dr. Graham, the town manager, bring printed copies that night. So if you wanted a copy last Thursday, you had it available during the hearing itself. I was concerned that we had too many electronic copies floating around and getting into this whole version thing where nobody knows whether they're looking at a real warrant. So if it isn't printed, it isn't real, okay, as far as I'm concerned. So I know I just gave my printed copy to another member, but that's the way I handled it, because we didn't have.
Sorry, I didn't realize that there were ones there.
I
would've-
didn't see any either.
Yeah, I
I know
would've
she
grabbed
gave you
one.
one as you
Yeah.
requested. That's the only one I knew was there.
Yeah.
And she
Is-
said that the one she was using was different than the one you had, and
Oh.
she doesn't know why.
If you want, I can send an email now of what she
Is the
wanted to
Is the
distribute.
copy room open, or is that locked
Yeah,
over there?
I can.
Copy room, it looks like it's open.
If it was,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question to Dave.
Yep.
Yes, Ed?
The email you sent out on Friday, is that the most current version that we know of? It says without the red lines?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah. let
most
me-
current that we know of?
Let me open it just to be sure. Hold on. That's Friday.
what was Friday's date?
31, 30, 29. Says it's from Robin for Thursday, November 4th.
No, you said the 4th?
Yes, there's an email
Friday. It
from
says
Mr.
Friday.
Lurie on the 5th. Is that the email that you're referring to?
It says, is on Friday, which, whatever day Friday was, 28th. It says finally without the red line. That's the email.
Yep, the 5th was Friday.
Sorry, Bill. Can you hear me now? Thanks.
Yeah, it says, hello, the attached warrant is the version handed out during tonight's open hearing. We were told this is not the final version. I will forward any version that arrives before FinCom takes its vote on Monday. Thank you, Dave. Is that the email you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my concern, Mr. Chairman, is on November 4th, we got a warrant that was passed on from town council, and it's designated with the KP number. The next one that came out just says KP doc. This is without the red lines. Dave, I printed a copy for you. Now, I don't know why we would have the document be entitled differently, because we got one from KP at one point that had all the articles correct, numbered, just the numbering. And the next one that came out without that just said, oh, this version, the numbers were different. So this back and forth, and you're getting something that town council created, then you're getting something that somebody else has modified. I have no idea what version they're making it off of. That's why I said, I just caution you when you're making your recommendations or your motions that, in my opinion, we don't have the latest warrant. She told us they were still working on it last Thursday. And that's why we have, 8 or 10 versions. So I don't know which one you want to use tonight, but
Well, in that case, any motions, maybe we should read from the Friday one, and then if it changes from, if you want to vary from that one, but we could use the most recent one that we received on Friday, the Doc X one, I guess it's called, KP Doc X. Any motions if you want to have a motion different than that, then make it known. We'll read from there.
So
Yes,
you-
Mr. Hanson?
You want to use the one from 11.5 that just says KP Docs?
For reference, yeah. I mean, if we want to make any adjustments, we'll just start with this as a reference point. Yes, Mr. Hanson?
I'm not sure that if we're unsure of the specific article, that I don't think we should be legally taking a vote on it, one way or the other. In the past, we used to number them, an article, so if there was any revision on it, it would be a certain ID number or a revision number. It might be worthwhile doing that in the future to eliminate the problem we have right now. Obviously, we can't do it now, but
My printout's from
we
the
certainly got to clarify what we're voting on.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Do we have any other comments about this warrant discussion? Diane, did you want to print some? Is that what you were asking? We'll go from Doc X, emailed out on the 5th. So for reference, find it in the email, Doc X. Dave, you have Mr. Rowe on the internet? Okay, back to Article 5, Do we have a motion on this? Or do we have any comment or discussion?
I'll make a comment. This article, of course, has been passed already, and the only reason this is here is because the language had to be changed to make sure it was in accordance to both state and also Stoughton requirements. And I can tell you that the MSBA Board of Directors met at the end of October, did not have Stoughton South Elementary School on the agenda. They meet again at the end of December. There's a good chance it'll be there, so I encourage us to really go forward and get this passed so that if at the end of December the MSBA invites us in, we'll be ready to go.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other comments on this discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Hanson?
If we vote on this with the revisions, and the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Board Authority, does not approve it or make some change in it, are we stuck with what we have to do?
I can actually answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Wolk.
having been through a couple of MSBA projects. Okay, the only time that they have a problem with a article in a town meeting is if it doesn't meet their criteria, and this meets their criteria. Okay, so if for some reason they throw up their hands and say we don't want to speak to Stoughton ever again, that's doesn't happen, but it could.
I'll be
Then.
nice to 'em.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Everything is okay.
Can I?
Thank you.
Mr. Lurie?
Yeah, I just want to ask the new members, there's 4 of them who were not here during the last town meeting, part of Finance Committee. You're going to be voting to recommend or not recommend this article. Is there anybody who has a question about what this is? Because it might sound a little involved that, is everybody clear that, because you're the only ones that'll be a fresh new vote on the article where all the rest of it's a revote. You know what I mean? Okay, that's it.
Eric, do you have any questions? Janet, any questions? Harvey, any questions? Mark, questions, comments? Anyone else? Do we have a motion here?
Who made the motion?
Who made the motion on that?
All right, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and vote in favor of Article 5.
Who made the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, there we go.
Who made the motion?
Dave made the motion. Joel did the second.
Dave and Joel?
Bob did the second.
Bob did the second, sorry. Dave made the motion and Bob made the second.
We look a lot alike.
You look a lot alike, exactly. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
It's 15. To approve it.
Okay, next up is Article 4, Discontinuance of Page Street. We have any discussion on this? Comments, questions?
Article 4, Page Street. Yeah, my comment would be, something was mentioned that night that, you know, they're trying to work with this individual as far as getting an easement for the Page Street facility. You know, I mean, you know, for the dump, you know, for the dump. They're trying, and they've been working with him. He doesn't want to do anything. So, it's my opinion. Why are we? I'm going to vote against this because if we're dealing with an individual who's going to make the most out of getting that road taken away, and we have another committee, board, whatever, in town that's been trying to work with him to get something, and he just does nothing, does nothing, does nothing. So if he doesn't want to be cooperative, trying to help out getting something simple done, whether it's an easement to get into the dump or what have you. And I say we turn it down until they can work something out and let them bring it back again later. That's my opinion.
Any other comments, opinions on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Eric?
so as the new kid, would it be possible to get some context on what John was just talking about? I have no sense of what that is, and so it obviously is affecting the discussion, but I don't have any background or context of that.
Do we have anyone here who could provide the background or context on that?
Or is that-
He was here.
I believe he's talking very loudly in the stairwell.
I think he's in the stairwell.
Okay.
But,
Maybe John has some background on
no, I
this?
mean, I just, in talking with after he spoke that night, and he was a little vague, because he didn't really want to call someone out, but the owner of all the property surrounding this is the one that's going to benefit from this road being dissolved. And they've been trying to work with him in order to get access to the, I guess it's not the but into the dump. And if he get off his phone, we could get him in here. But they've been working with him, and he just keeps stonewalling, and he doesn't want to cooperate to do anything to help the town out with that. So, you know, if someone's not being reasonable or doesn't want to cooperate, then I say, let them work that out and come back. That's my opinion.
I agree with John's statement. I think we lose our leverage once you do that.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Joel, did you have anything?
Yeah, I don't agree with John's statement, and I think that the leverage has to be provided by the select board. If I read this correctly, we're conveying things that have to be determined by the select board in terms of sale or anything. We're not actually agreeing to sell the property or buy the property or do anything. We're just turning it into something that the select board can use, and they would have the authority and the leverage to make the best deal. So that's my understanding of this article.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Any other questions,
I got a
comments? Eddie?
Yeah, I have a comment. I agree with Joel. The leverage would be with the selectmen. If we pass this, then we got a carrot. And the select board is going to present it to the county commissioners. So they could sit on it or do what they want because it's their choice. And then they can work the leverage however that gets done. So, but without the carrot, there's less motivation for this individual to do something. At least now he's got something to work with, and they can determine however they want to proceed. But it has to pass first. So I'm in favor of this.
Yes, Harvey?
Am I right by understanding that under this article here, we are conveying the authority to the select board to actually dissolve the paper street? Am I correct?
No, we're giving the authorization for the select board to petition the county commissioners to dissolve the street.
Okay, so in other words, what I'm getting at is the select board is the next step before anything's done.
That's correct.
Okay, so by us saying go ahead to the select board, this gives them the leverage to possibly get done what they want, possibly, and it's again up to the select board as to what they want to do. Correct?
Well,
Is this-
they had no problem inserting it into the warrant, did they? So that tells you they were in favor of it. So I'm not looking to give them the okay to go ahead and do what they put before us, because that's very likely what they will do. That's just my opinion. That's why we have what we have in front of us throughout this whole warrant, because it's not ready. Just my opinion.
Yes, Jess?
I just have a question. Did anyone hear anybody speak to why this is an urgent matter and it's taken up in a special town meeting as opposed to waiting? I didn't hear any arguments to that effect, and I'm just wondering if anybody knows of why this is so urgent.
Anyone hear any urgency on this? I didn't hear urgency myself either. It's what is it?
Yeah, my understanding was the urgency for having a special town meeting was to get a new zoning for the downtown to replace the schmood. That was the burning hot one. Then it became, and it was also the fire station because they thought they would have something that would potentially be able to be something we could act on. Those were the two urgent things. Everything else, and I think what ended up happening also was the South School was naturally an urgent thing because they can't move forward and they'd end up having to wait an entire year if they didn't. So I look at those three articles as being the only really urgent ones. The rest of them could wait, but they're here because it's convenient. That's my opinion. That's strictly my opinion.
Anyone have anything else on this? Questions, comments, opinions? Harvey?
Again, since it was brought up about urgent action, could this committee take no action and table it, or do we have to act on it?
We wouldn't table it. I mean, we could refer to town meeting, we could vote it down, we could vote in favor of it, but we wouldn't table it to town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? Joel?
No, I'll make a motion. I move that we recommend this to town meeting. Thank you, Dave.
Who's that?
Oh, that's Bob.
Bob, okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do we get? 7?
7.
7 to 8.
Well, we don't know that. All opposed?
Seven to 8, it failed.
What was the score?
7 to 8. 7 in favor, 8 say no, it fails.
Okay, that's Article 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Chet.
why are we raising our hands? Normally, we use the voice count.
Well, we did voice count when we were Zoom.
No, we always did, when,
No, we always raised hands. You have to get the count.
Yeah, we have to count, so when you're
but
holding your hand up, otherwise you're just guessing how many people were saying yes, you know?
well, maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought Mr. Trumbull always asked our names if you said yes or no.
Well, we can ask him. He's right here.
We asked for
Am I-
names
am I
when we were on
mistaken?
Zoom because.
Yeah.
Eddie's going to
that's the only way
clarify
you
right
could
now.
vote.
That's
Eddie,
because
can
we
you-
were on Zoom, we had to go down the roll.
Okay, my mistake.
Normally, when we
I'm
meet in
sorry.
person, we just raise our hands.
Sorry.
That's what we've been doing in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go to Article 10, the Affordable Housing Trust.
I don't have all the people, his doesn't have a box. Just look at it for a second. Oh, I know about that.
Do we have any questions or comments or opinions on this? Any debate, discussion? Yes, Diane?
Sorry. Do we have any idea what kind of money we're talking for this? It says to be determined, so
I asked that
is it
during.
$5 or $1 million?
I might be wrong, but we could probably get clarification. My understanding, though, is this is just to create the trust. But I think we have someone who can answer this.
He answered this during the, it's 0.
Yeah, I believe he said they're going to fund it with $500,000 a year once it's approved.
Thank you,
CPC.
Mr. Chair. This article is unfunded. The to be determined is a 100% typo. We did not ask for funding. We asked that it be put in as none. This bylaw that is being proposed and will be before a special town meeting that's before you now is just that. It is a change to our charter. We will be doing 3 things. We will be accepting Mass General Law, which already exists. We will also be accepting the bylaws that were written based on Massachusetts state statute that exists. And then we will be voting, and this is all in one vote, we will be voting a special act that will request from state legislature that they bequeath the properties to the housing authority rather than the select board in the town if this was ever to dissolve. So the properties will stay the property of the Board of Trustees unless there's a dissolution of the trust, at which point in time it would revert to the housing authority. We cannot fund something that doesn't exist, so there isn't a to be determined on this. It's simply no funding is being requested. However, to Mr. Trunfio's point, if this passes, we will and have already gotten an application before the CPC for $500,000. To put that into context, prior to the COVID relief fund, which town meeting approved twice at annual and special town meeting, we had spent $0 on housing from the CPC perspective. So this trust is an effort to balance those scales out a little, but more importantly, to allow this town to provide affordable housing for those who need it. I can't write this for seniors, but that is certainly priority one for us when we put this together. But not having a board of trustees, I can't tell you what their priorities will be. We set some goals for them, and that's our hope, is that they'll follow those goals.
Mark, I have no problem with this, but I'm just curious, how do they determine what is affordable housing? I mean, if you were in Newtonville or Newton or something like that, you know, there's a vast difference between that and, we'll say, Stoughton.
So that's a great question. The state recognized this as being a problem as well. DHCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development, took me a minute, there's a lot of alphabets out there, determined with the state, they worked with the state to determine the number. The number ends up being 80% of the average median income in town. Don't hold me to this, but I think the average median income from the town for a family of four is somewhere in the $100,000 range, which, if we use that as a hypothetical number, would mean an affordable, a family who would qualify perhaps for an affordable deed restriction could make up to 80% of that.
Would that, it used to be if you spent, you were allowed to, we'll say, the housing allowance of your income was 33%. Is that number changed?
So it's now 30%, and that is considered poverty level. So 30% of the average median income is considered desolate, for lack of a better
No, I meant
word.
the amount that you would spend on housing shouldn't be more than the 30%.
Oh, got you. That is certainly taken into account, but they backed into the number slightly differently. They looked at the overall income, what the cost of living is in Massachusetts, and that's where they came up with that 80%. That wasn't us, that was the state.
Gee, does the cost of living include taxes?
It's a great question, it should.
Thank you. We have any other questions or comments on this? Any discussion at all? Yes, Mark?
So this is going to be strictly funded by CPC funds, not funds from anything else, or what?
Thank you, Mark, for the question. Funding will start with the CPC. There are a number of state grants which the town cannot currently entertain without a trust. Those will be sought as well. And there's a third leg to this, and that is private investment. So banks, large corporations, things like that, all have money that every year they donate. We miss that boat because we don't have a trust. Now, money can be given to the town by a private organization, but it cannot be earmarked. So that money would have to go into the general fund. Banks don't generally want to give towns money for the general fund. However, a housing trust, something along those lines, they're very interested in.
So those are basically the three.
Those are the three.
It won't come.
The
say, per se,
CPC.
It won't come from our, you won't be coming to the general, you won't be coming to the general fund.
Absolutely
asking
not.
for
No.
whatever, or.
No. Unless town meeting was to decide they found that to be of use, then the answer is no. But that would have to go before town meeting. There's no budget being created on the town side to give money to this.
Sweet, thank
So
you.
it's kind of a net zero for you guys and a
Right.
gain, you know?
Do we have any other questions, comments, discussion? That's it?
Well, I can, thank you,
Hillary?
Juan, through you. I've been watching as much as I could to absorb. There's so many facets to this article that some things make me a little bit concerned, but the benefits are so great, it's hard to not go in favor of this. So I'm going to be voting in favor. I don't know how else to frame it other than that. There's a lot of projects will happen a lot easier because some of the limitations around the town meeting process is that it's very difficult to get money out of funds like the CPA, and this allows them to actually use it for what they've been collecting the taxes for. So if you don't mind a body being involved with being able to take advantage of monies to stimulate growth on projects in the private sector with developers, you should vote in favor. If you're more inclined to slow the pace down because you don't like the ability to take advantage of opportunities and use the money that's actually set aside for those projects, then if you like a slow approach, maybe it should lean the other way. But that's kind of a very, very oversimplified way to say it. But that was kind of my takeaway from it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laurie. Do we have any other questions, discussion, anything on this? We have a motion at all?
Motion to accept.
Who made the motion? Who did the second? Harvey, motion. Second from Bob Desmond.
Bob Desmond.
Bob's really good at this second here.
Really
isn't
good. He's
he?
totally
You
number
gotta jump
2 here.
faster, right? All in favor?
Raise your hands. So you have 5, 6. You a yes? Yes.
Who's everybody? Yep. It was
Okay,
unanimous.
so that's 14.
All opposed? I think it's 15.
Oh, it's 15. It is 15.
Okay, there we go, unanimous.
Good job, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Next, we have Article 12, which was the petition bylaw in regards to plastic bags.
I actually don't have that. Do you have that?
Do we have any opinions, discussion, questions on this? Anyone have a view on this at all? Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the purpose of, or the intent to reduce the pollution, so I have no problems with reducing pollution. What I do have a problem with is in this particular thing, it becomes a town-wide hodgepodge of regulations. So if I go into Brockton, I can have a 4 mil bag, but I can't get the same thing put in a package at Stop and Shop in Stoughton. I could see it could be an absolute nightmare. The other problem is the health department enforcing this. I think they got enough things to do. And if you're going to measure, I'm capable of doing some very fine, careful machining. And a mil is 1/1000th of an inch. If you make that bag 1/10,000th of an inch thicker, it's okay. If you make it 1/10,000th of an inch less, it's not okay. Are you going to train these people with specialized equipment to measure the thickness of a plastic bag? Or are you going to make the manufacturer stamp the thickness on it, on each one that comes out? Or are you going to, and this equipment to measure it with a legal degree of accuracy, it's going to cost several $100s. And the proper training, because I could tell you, you could take a micrometer and stick it on a piece of paper and you can come up with several different numbers simply because you're compressing it, and plastic is even more compressible than paper. So although this article is well-intentioned, it's not well thought out, and I can't vote for it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments? Joel?
Yeah, I just have a question, Mr. Chairman. Why is the Finance Committee actually taking action on this?
Fines, because there's fines.
It was assigned to the Finance Committee by the Rules Committee. We don't have to take action. Sometimes in the past, we have referred to town meeting petition articles.
Do you think it's only because it's fines, Elliot? Is that?
If there's fines, you have to determine where the fines are going to go, so.
That's the reason. There's money involved. I think it's $100, I think, on the
Okay.
first offense, or the second
Well,
offense.
I agree with Elliot, and I'm not in favor of this particular article.
Thank you. Harvey? Thank you, Joel.
Yes, as I stated in town meeting, we do have a pollution problem. It's a major problem nationwide with plastic bags, with people throwing all sorts of things out the window of their car and so on. But plastic bags do serve a purpose, as can one of our board members tell you. I know in my household, we take any trash that might not go in the compactor, chicken bones or something like that, put it in a plastic bag, tie it. We're able to throw it out in the trash and not worry about the animals coming to eat it or attacking my trash barrel. I find single-use plastic bags very handy. Secondly, plastic bags, as I stated at the open meeting, were so designed to stop us from cutting down trees. Trees are our source of photosynthesis. We have to breathe oxygen. On one hand, we have to breathe. The other hand, we have to stop choking with plastic bags. As someone said, there's a whole lot of education that has to go forth to the public. I don't think it's our place to restrict the use of plastic bags and say, start cutting down those trees. Because, they cut down a 60, 80, 100-foot pine tree to make that craft paper bag, and lo and behold, they plant 3, they say. How many years does it take for those 3 trees, if they all survive, to get to 60 or 80 feet? They don't work when they're small little trees. So it's something to think about. I myself are going to vote against the article.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other discussion, comments? Jess?
Yeah, I disagree entirely with all of the points made so far. I think it's not a thin plastic bag versus paper bag binary here. We're talking about cloth bags, reusable bags, things that people already own, boxes that can be used. Lots of other options are out there that can be used over and over again, and it doesn't mean we have to only have paper as the other option. And I think at some point, our town could be a leader, and then maybe Brockton would say, look at what Stoughton's doing. They stepped up. They're trying to take care of the environment. They care about all there's a tremendous amount of this, and it's all driven by petroleum industry. They want to see these things sold. So the more we want to keep using them for all these purposes, the more they're going to sell, and that's how they win. They have a tremendous market lobbying for this, and it is crushing our earth. It's destroying our environment, and I really think we could at least make a stand and do something in our own community. Nobody's going to be policing the mills on the bag. That's not the point. The point is to make a cultural shift and a stand in favor of trying to do something positive and to get some of this litter out of our oceans, out of the rivers, out of the streams, and out of our streets. I think we should take it very seriously and think of it as one step that we could make that's a positive contribution toward the larger problems we're facing. The animals cannot talk. The animals cannot tell us, I don't want to eat this and I don't want to die from it, but that's what they're doing. They're like microplastics in all of our food. This is a serious, serious thing, and we are making a important choices when we make these choices even as our own town. It's something we can do. I feel pretty strongly that it's excellent this person is putting it forward, and I think we should take it seriously, and I think we shouldn't worry about whether or not it's going to be, people are running around and holding each business accountable for it or not. There are plenty of manufacturers who know the rules on this. There are plenty of much larger places that have done this successfully, and it's made a huge difference in their communities. In fact, as our petitioner had mentioned, there are entire countries that are considering this because of the destruction. So I just feel very strongly that this is a great idea, and I'd love to live in a town that took these kinds of proposals seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. Eric, do you have a comment on this?
Comment, yeah. If I may, in response to Harvey's point regarding, paper, obviously, yes, because we can't keep over-harvesting trees to make paper products. On the other hand, paper as a product is simply more profitable to recycle than plastic, and certainly the thin plastic bags. It's not profitable. Most of it ends up in the landfill anyway. In the larger sense, I'll be candid that what drives me nuts about this article is that, on the one hand, the checkout bags are banned, and yet the thin bags for produce and dry cleaning and newspapers are not, and it drives me absolutely nuts because it feels like it's tinkering at the margins when, if we're going to solve the problem, the solutions have to come at such a higher level than what we're capable of doing in the town of Stoughton. And then at the same time, if we don't at least tinker at the margins, then how do we ever get to the larger scale solutions? We're watching it play out in Glasgow right now, promise after promise that may or may not yield tangible benefit, but at least we can do something that is tangible, if small. So I am going to go ahead and support this, and I hope you will join me in that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Diane, do you have something to add to this?
I'm just going to reiterate what I said the other night about, I kind of applaud Molly for bringing this forward. I think it's a great idea. However, I think there were too many questions and too many unanswered questions. I think what really impressed me was the woman from the food pantry who got up and said that's what they use to package all their stuff. I want to tell you that I dropped off bags to them this weekend. If we can at least start doing something like that. Yes, I agree. We shouldn't have too many of these thin plastic bags. I have a whole great big bag of them. I don't really throw them out as a rule. But I think to do that, and not only that, but we just came out of a pandemic. I think it's really kind of tough to throw all of this stuff at the small businesses and say, you know what, now you're going to throw away all those plastic bags you bought and go and find something else. So for me, I'm not going to support it, not at this time, but if it comes back with a lot more questions answered, I'm sure I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. Do we have any other?
Can I? Hi,
Matt?
Mr. Chairman. Chuck Collins. I agree. I use, what do you call it, bags, cloth bags when I go to Stop and Shop or Shaw's, whole thing. But then I have to use plastic bags to put my fish, my meat, my chicken in it. And then also I use that for my waste baskets in my bathrooms. So now I have to go, not use those, but then I have to go buy waste basket and trash bags for my trash barrel, not trash barrels, but my kitchen areas. So is that recyclable? Is that biodegradable? Is that something that is going to hurt the environment? I'm just saying, so you're replacing one thing for another thing, and I'm not trying to be angry, because my wife always tell me I'm angry, but I'm not trying to be angry. I'm just trying to make a point. Okay, so are we going to, I don't know, I'm just like, what? Shut up. Oh. No, I'm just saying, like, are we replacing one thing for another? That's all.
Thank you very much, Chet. Janet, do you have something to add here?
Yes, I'm really torn on this one because I really do believe in saving the planet, the plastic bags. I see them all around and, you know, it's an eyesore and it does cause a problem. I also think about the fact, one, for my own selfish reason, I do use the plastic bags to throw away something to put it in my trash bag. And then I think about the families that do a lot of shopping.
Janet, could you pull your mic a little closer?
Sorry, do I need to start all over? Did you hear anything I said? I also think about the families that do a lot of shopping in volume. A lot of them may not have 10 cloth bags to bring with them to the supermarket. And a lot of times when you go to carry the paper bags, they're making them so thin right now. Number one, you can't grab them like you can. I mean, I've seen people, you know, put a whole bunch on one arm. You just can't, it's a matter of convenience for a lot of people. And I understand that there's a risk of, you know, the businesses, but I also just think for convenience for people. But I'm torn, and you know, there's pros and cons for both sides of it.
Well, thank you very much, Janet. Do we have any other discussion here? Anything to add? Dave?
Thank you, Vaughn. Is that okay? Ed, did you? You'll wait. Yeah, I'm glad she brought it forward because it allows us to talk about it, because I think it's probably long overdue. I'm actually against most plastic because I think we have a throwaway society and everything we buy in the store breaks within you know, you look at it the wrong way and it breaks. I used to remember days when things were made out of metal, made out of wood, they lasted. I kind of have that nostalgic yearning to go back to when things were like that, where things lasted. But ironically, I'm actually against the idea of getting rid of plastic bags because they're not single use, as many people have already said. I use the bags over again, and sometimes even more than once. They're not single use. And I actually felt like I was contributing to the global, you know, well-being through my small contribution of reusing plastic bags. And now they're going to take it away from me. So now I have to go buy my pollution instead of actually reusing something as a recycling. So it's the wrong plastic, I think, to get rid of. I like to get rid of the other kinds of plastic that drive me crazy. So that's why I'm voting against it.
Thank
Are
you,
you
Dave.
talking about dog poop?
Thank you, Dave.
I am not allowed to go there, but you can bring it up, and I'd be ditto. I'll just say ditto if you say that.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any other comments or discussion on this? John?
Yeah, I think I, like many, you know, you look at it and you're a little torn one way or the other. Yeah, I reuse the few we get. I do reuse them, and you know, but I don't think it's that big an inconvenience for me. When you look at the number of them that are produced when you go to the market and so forth, compared to how many people may actually reuse them, it's not that they're not going to be available if you really needed them. It's to get rid of the common, here you go, here's your bag, and you can just throw it away. I believe the proponent said that there were 144 cities and towns out of the 351 in this state that already have an ordinance like this. So while I tend to be against big government coming in more and more, this is something that I will support. I don't think it's really that big an inconvenience, and let town meeting have a whack at it. If they don't agree with some of the things that are in there and they want a longer time frame before it's available or whatever, then I think they'd turn that down at that point and then let them bring it back with a little bit more information that they might be looking for. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, John. Do we have any other comments, questions, discussion, stories about plastic?
It will free up a lot more of the industry's resources to be used in things that you still need.
I have one final comment, if I may.
Yes,
Mr.
Jess.
Chair. just to Mr. Lurie and the others, you'd be surprised that with all of that other plastic you don't want to get and all the extra packaging, there's plenty of other options for lining your trash can. I can't even get to any of the plastic bags that the grocery store would get because everything else comes in some kind of plastic bag and plastic covering and plastic sheathing that you could easily repurpose for your trash can. So I'm just saying, you know, you still have plenty of options without having to go out and purchase something.
Any other? Yes, Chet?
Doctor, what are you talking about as far as,
Well, let's see. I'll be very specific.
Are you
If
talking
you
about
buy
outside-
toilet paper,
no,
it's
no,
wrapped in
excuse me,
plastic.
Excuse me, can I speak?
Yeah,
Are
you asked me
talking
what I
about
was talking
outside trash barrels, inside trash barrels, or waste baskets?
He was talking about his waste baskets, so that's what I was talking about. That's what we're talking about, is using single-use grocery store
Yes.
for waste baskets. That's what I'm talking
Okay.
about, waste baskets.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We're good now? Okay,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm in.
thank you. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Chet. Anything else?
I'd
Eddie?
just like to, this is more of a philosophical and personal choice type of discussion. I don't know if the Finance Committee really needs to opine on whether we should vote this up or down or taint the discussion on the floor one way or the other. I think we should vote to refer it to town meeting and let town meeting decide whatever they want to do.
Is that a motion?
If everybody's done with discussion, I'll make that motion.
If that's the motion to refer it to town meeting, I'll second that.
Yes, that's my motion. Refer it to town meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Bob's the second?
No, he's disappointed he got beat.
Yeah, yeah. All in favor?
That was everybody, right?
All opposed? Unanimous to refer to town meeting.
That was unanimous.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed. We'll go to the next one here. Let's move it along. Article 3. We were told this was being dismissed.
On the TIF. No. I would,
What do you think?
I would suggest that the Finance Committee look at something as, we took no action as we were told this would be dismissed.
Is that the motion?
To take no
I make a
action?
motion that we just, for Article 3, we just, we put in, the Finance Committee took no action as we were told this was going to be dismissed during the hearings. Diane Beecher.
Diane is the second on there. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Joel, you? That was you, second?
All opposed?
Who was the second? Was it-
Diane was the second
Diane
on
was
that,
the
yep.
second, Diane's. Yeah. All right, this is take no action.
Okay, next we have, well, we're not doing that one. Article 11. Article 11 is the West Street Barn evaluation. Do we have any discussion on the West Street Barn evaluation, Article 11? Chet?
Okay, as you know, I'm sorry, Chet Collins, Precinct 1, Finance Committee member. As you know, I was opposed to this. And again, my wife says I'm angry when I talk, but I'm trying to be nice.
I get that a lot too, Chet.
I just don't think we should spend $20,000 on this project, okay, as I mentioned before. As a contractor in my years, and I think the town engineer and the building inspector can go out there and make an assessment on what to do. And I understand that it's 55 acres of conservation land that I talked to some people who said that could be turned over to a private developer if we wanted to change the bylaws. That's not right, John?
No, if it's conservation land, you're not going to be turning that over to a developer. It's conservation land. It's under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. And I would doubt with all my thoughts that they would be turning that over to a developer, not if it's conservation property.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, that was mentioned that night, but no, I don't think that's realistic to think that it would be turned over for development.
Okay. Well, I did some research and said it could be by doing deeds and stuff like that, but that's fine. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my thought is, as before, that we should not spend $20,000 on to evaluate this barn to whether or not it's going to be torn down, rebuilt, or whatever. I'm sure there's a lot of things in that barn that can be resalvaged, okay, and sent to, somebody else to build an old barn or whatever. That's my thought, and I just don't want to spend $20,000 on this project. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chet. Do we have any other discussion? Jess, do you have something to say?
Thank you. Believe it or not, I mostly agree with Chet and even Dave Lurie. Mark this day.
You're giving him a heart attack.
I think it's not that I'm opposed. I definitely love historical projects and the Historical Commission and all of that, so I'm definitely not opposed to that part of it. But I think this is one of those instances where I'd really like to think about this as what do they want to see on this property first, as Mr. Lurie was arguing the other night? What's the full plan? And then how might we take something from this barn into that plan, rather than can we save a partially okay, partially falling down, and partially condemnable building? I agree with salvaging what's valuable out of it and trying to do something innovative with it, but I think before we get ourselves started down the trail of a project, this is just the first 20,000, then we're going to be on the hook to, make the next investment and so on. And we don't know where it's going, and we don't know what the big picture is here. So I would prefer not to vote in favor of this at this time and ask the Historical Commission and the other people in the Conservation Commission to think about what's their vision for this whole property and this idea, and then talk about how this is going to fit into that. Why do we need $20,000 to salvage something from this, to create something that captures what's left of the historical nature of the building into the new vision and what it's going to be? Thank you.
Well spoke.
Thank you very much. Eric, do you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the risk of being flippant, I'm looking at the CP2 and, the Community Preservation Fund, the balance sheet, and I just cannot possibly see the harm in spending the money that is available for this exact sort of thing with the resources that this body has. I can't see what it's taking away from, and so I don't see the harm in pursuing it and providing the sort of initial information that turns into a big vision for this kind of project. So I'm happy to support it for that reason. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. Marty, do you have something to add to this?
Yes, I went and checked out the barn, and in my unprofessional opinion, part of it is quite salvageable. But I'm interested in spending the $20,000 to have an evaluation done. That doesn't put us on the hook for spending more. It just finds us the potential of what might be there. And so I'm interested in having the evaluation done and then go from there.
All right, thank you very much. Marty, anyone else have anything to add? Mark?
Yeah, I've also seen the barn in question. And yes, there is a lot of uses that could be used there. Forget the gentleman's name to my left.
Microphone.
Could you pull the mic a little bit
Oh,
closer?
sorry.
That way everyone at home can hear you.
The I've seen the barn, and I forgot the gentleman's name to my left. I believe he said it was only like 40 acres, but it's actually like 700 acres that's there. You know what I mean? It's the whole Bird Street Conservation. This connects to it. It's part of it. So you're not just talking a little parcel, a little thing. This is a huge area. And if we can use this barn to a benefit, to allow people to go to the Bird Street Conservation, to do gardens, to do whatever there, why not spend the $20,000 to figure out what this is for? It's no harm, no foul on it. Everything else in this town, we have to figure out what we're gonna do with it. We have to do a survey on it. So we own it, we might as well do a survey and see what's going on.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Elliot, you have something to say on this?
Well, this is going to sound strange, but I agree with Jess, that things are all twisted up. I'll recover. But I really think, I think there's better uses for that money. You're saying it's there, why not spend it? I think if it's there, why not spend it wisely? At this point, if the barn is to be torn down, it may be. But if you decided to build it, what are you going to do with it afterwards? You got to have some concept of what that barn is going to be, other than a nice-looking barn that nobody uses or has a use for. So, yeah, we could grow mushrooms or something.
Well, thank you very much, Elliot. I think Harvey is next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I also agree with Jess. You have a barn that's, as stated, one portion should be taken down, one portion we don't know, and the other portion might be good. And let's just throw $20,000 in there. Why not? It's only $20,000. Well, hypothetically, we throw $20,000 into it, and a gentleman comes along and says, yep, for $275,000, we can restore this to its original shape. Well, let's spend $275,000. And we spend $275,000, now we got this beautiful barn. We don't have any horses or cows to put in it. I mean, if you had told me you're going to spend $100,000 to put a restroom out in the middle of the conservation land that people could use who were walking the trails, and again, I don't know how many people use the conservation land, I'd say, okay, yeah, that makes kind of sense. But to have a barn with no animals, no farm equipment, because even if you used it for a community farming area, no one's going to buy a tractor. You know, you go there with a hoe and a shovel and a rake. So I think it's a waste of money, and you're just investing in a bottomless pit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harvey. Joel, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of this article, and the primary reason, and I never thought I'd say this, I agree with Dave Laurie, is that we should be taking a look at the entire area and find out. I would be very much in favor if there was an article that spent some money for a consultant to come in and take a look at the entire area, including the barn, and come up with concepts on how it should be used in its entirety. And I think that's the proper way of doing it. This is just nothing to me, so I'm not in favor of this.
Well, thank you very much, Joel.
Is
anyone
there a cellar for that barn? Does that barn have a cellar?
I don't know if the barn has a cellar. I mean,
No.
you mean a basement?
So it's not going to be a barnless pit? Oh, sorry, I had.
John, I think you had something to add to this?
God, that hurt. That one hurt my brain, Elliot. Actually, I'm in favor of this. We do have, you know, 3 specific funds that we put money into. Historical preservation is one. We could be like the Armory and just let it sit and rot and fall down, you know, take the liability if somebody goes in there. It's not secure. There's no secure area around there. So I think it's a proactive thing. Let's take a look at it, see what it would take to, if you have to do anything with it, can you do anything with it? I think it's a small price to find out, rather than going the way they have with some of these buildings and just leave them be until they fall apart and then see what you can do. They gave a number of different things that were being discussed or possibilities when they were at the hearing the other night. So again, I'm just saying I'm in favor of it, and I will be voting for it.
Thank you very much, John. Dave, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fawn. Through you, Dave Lurie, in case I have to announce that. Some of the things about the barn itself had to do with the value of the wood, but the value of the wood itself, I've seen a lot of, I watch a lot of History Channel, so I get to see some pretty neat projects that people put together. You could take the actual wood and reuse it into a project that the town could potentially benefit from. So it should come up as an idea of, let's take this valuable wood and make it into something. That would be an idea. That would be producing something. We already have, as I mentioned last week, a whole host of things in which, you know, to the point that was said earlier about, you know, what's wrong with just using some money because it's available and then we'll figure it out later. We have a litany of properties that the town just went in the habit of just buy it, we'll figure it out later. It's one of the worst things you could do in a town, because what happens is that you end up having to maintain properties to keep them sound and not get, you know, weathered. There's a lot of investment and time put into these money pits, because we can go from like Cape and Reynolds. We could talk about you know, the Randolph Savings. They didn't have an idea of what they wanted to do with it, but they just said, well, let's just throw a department in there just because we have to have a placeholder in there until we could really figure out what we really want to do with it. And then, you know, the railroad station, there's still, you know, they have RFPs out there. Nobody's responding to them, but yet we're putting money in to plug the roof, take the bird poop out, you know, put in nice gutters, all that stuff. So we end up putting money in without the idea, and it just becomes a deeper hole that we end up putting ourselves in. Plus, you know, if you were to take a project and try to get a state grant, the state would look at you and say, what, you just want money for something just because it's old? They would throw you away and say, sorry, but we're not going to give you any grant because you don't have a concept as to what you're going to do with it. It's a very, you know, you should be very disciplined with the money, because you accumulate all these things that you just can't maintain. You're stretching yourself out too thin. What we should do is finish the things we already started. Glen Echo, we should get that finished. We should get Cape and Reynolds finished, on and on. The railroad station, there are some bubbling up ideas. I could tell you about some. But still, we should be finishing the things we started. That's where we should be putting our money. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Dave. Do we have any other discussion on this? Any other comments? Yes, Chet.
I'd just like to agree with Dave. Eloquent. Everything that you said was true in this town, and also John. Thank you. And all the questions I was going to ask, you guys already asked them. Thank you.
So you agree with Dave, and Dave agrees with someone, and Jess agrees with Joel, and Joel is everybody agrees with someone here. Okay. It's a kumbaya. Diane, do you have something to say? Diane, you must have something to say, Diane. Okay, do we have a motion here? Eddie?
I motion to approve the $20,000 from the CPC to fix the bond.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on this article. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what that is.
7?
1, 2, 3. Hang on.
I got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. Can we
1,
count to
2,
7?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All opposed? 8. Here we go. 7, 8.
Oh, this was on there, we should mention it, 9, just because it's in the book. It was on there
Oh.
that night.
Yeah, we can mention it, but it wasn't assigned to us.
I know, just for the record, Article 9 was on the agenda that evening. It is in the warrant, but Article 9 was not assigned, and I just think it would be appropriate to just say the Finance Committee took no action as the article was not assigned.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
I agree. Just to
Okay.
cover it, because it's in there.
All right, all in favor? All opposed?
I hurt my neck on that one. That was quick.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, so, let's see. We're done with 10, 11, 12.
I think that's all of them from that night. That's all of them from that night.
Well, let's go to Article 7. Article 7, unpaid bills. Any questions or comments on this? Any discussion at all? All right.
Make a motion to approve Article 7?
Second.
Before we do that, Diane, did you have a question?
I think I asked, I'm not sure if it was answered correctly, but I didn't know where this money was coming from.
It's coming from the
departments?
FY '22 department budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll amend Jess's motion if she will accept it to, it comes from the FY '22 departmental budgets.
Okay, we have a motion then,
I think that's
amended,
what's
and
in
then,
there, right?
whose motion is it? Jess, and who's the second?
Several people seconded.
Several people. Who wants credit for the second? Give it to Elliot? Okay, great, thanks. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, there we go.
That was,
That was Article, it was 15-0, yes. That was Article,
what was the motion second?
Jess was the motion. Elliot took the second.
That was 15 to nothing to approve it.
You want to cover Article 8 now? How's that sound? Let's do Article 8. Supplemental fiscal year 22 departmental budgets. Eddie, you have something to say on this one?
No, just to reiterate, this was from the Southeast Regional. They got the ESSA 2 grant or whatever it was, then they took it back, and now we're short 66 and change. And there is no funding source yet. The hope is free cash gets approved, but we might be using that for the Packer. So the only other option would be to cut the budget. So other than a funding source, we have to pay it one way or the other. They'll take it if we don't, they'll sue us, whatever, but we have to pay it. So the only question is, where's the money going to come from?
Well, we
You-
could, oh, you got Bill on
I
there?
think we have Bill on the, what do we call this thing?
Yeah, could you repeat the question, Mr. Chairman? Oh, David?
The question had to do with where the money is going to come from for Article 8, the supplemental fiscal 22.
That's the 65,000, Bill.
Right. The only thing we would have available right now would be either free cash or stabilization. Like I mentioned before, it's too early in the year to pull from another 22 budget department.
So the only option of this was stabilization or free cash?
Yeah, is certified, did you know what free
Well-
cash is, Bill?
We can cut the budget, right?
The paperwork was submitted to the state last week. I mentioned that there's a December 6th meeting, so I anticipate, with 85 to 90% certainty that we'll have it before Thanksgiving.
All right, and to Ed, your question?
No, can we cut the budget, or are you going to submit the recap to the state so we can't do anything? Because this is why you don't have town meetings in December before the recap is set.
Did you hear Ed's
Repeat
point?
that, David.
Did you hear Ed's point, Bill, about?
I did not. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, so he's basically saying that because of the recap, there's no money available in the budget. You can't use the budget to find a cut to move money from that because of the recap.
We can't raise anything additional, but we could transfer from some other line in the budget if it were available.
But we don't.
The finance committee reserve. I don't know if you wanted to, if you wanted to use that this early in the year. But you're that's under your control. If you wanted to transfer from that line, the 60, the free cash. The committee pledged to use not more than 2.9 million, so that would make that
0.6. It's going
non-compliant with that rule. So this is kind of a dilemma. Do we want to ask them to wait until May for that extra 65,000?
Can you amend the
just don't
recap for changing the excise tax?
Say that again, please.
Can we amend the recap that you sent in?
Can you amend the recap that you sent in with
Has,
something?
oh, has it been sent in yet? Let's put it that way.
Because it hasn't been sent in yet, and something to do with excise tax, what'd you say?
Well, it came in way over
The
last
excise
year,
came
so
in
we could change
higher,
the estimate, but
With the excise coming in higher and not turning in the recap to the state, does that make it possible to redo it before turning it into the state?
No, we wouldn't have enough time to submit the recap with additional appropriations on it. If you work back from December 31st, which is the due date for the mailing of the tax bills, the treasurer needs about 3 weeks to get those bills ready. And then prior to that, you need another 2 weeks to have the recap approved. So we'd like to get the recap into the state by the end of the month.
Okay.
Have it finalized and the budget in. So that's the reason that we didn't put any articles on the town meeting that are funded from so-called raise and appropriate, the tax levy.
Bill, can we defer till May? Do we have to deal with it now? Can we just wait and then move it around after May 1st?
David?
Can you take this up in May? If you didn't have a special and just an annual in May, could we take it up in May? Because if you didn't have a special, you wouldn't have a special.
You could take it up in May, or the Select Board and FinCom could do the interdepartmental transfers after May 1st. That's assuming that the Southeastern Regional and the Southeastern Regional would just have to wait.
Yeah.
Wow,
I don't know if they'll be amenable to that, but
that's a thought.
that's what would have
I mean,
to happen.
this is a joint cost. It should come off the top. So if you're going to do something, it's got to be an allocation to both the school side and the town side. So
The joint cost is what Ed's point is. It comes off the top. So, yeah, I understand.
so I don't know. I'm just,
What's that?
here we are. And because we're doing this in December, not in November, we can't fool around with the recap. Because otherwise, if we don't get them out and approved, we don't send out the tax bills by December 31st, no one has to pay till May 1. That's just the way it is. So here we are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. Does anyone else have a question for Bill Rowe while we have him on speakerphone or whatever it's on? Diane, do you have a question?
I don't know if Bill could answer this or not, but what happened to the other towns? I would assume that they went back to other towns. Have the other towns come up with this money yet?
Did you hear that, Bill?
Yeah, do you know about the other towns that are faced with the same situation? How are they dealing with it?
I don't know what the other towns are doing, though.
I only say that because I like Ed's proposal. I mean, it wasn't our mistake, it was their mistake. And now, you know, it puts us in a pinch. I'd rather wait till the spring and see where it is, and then we'll know exactly how much free cash and stuff we have.
Can you ask Bill if this can just be, if we push it off to May, is that something that's going to be acceptable? I mean, the bill was already due, so.
Yes, even though the bill was already due, is there any concern you have about waiting till May? Is that okay? Is a question, Bill.
Well, I can talk to Karen, the treasurer at Southeastern. I can give her a call and say, you know, we really don't have any funding source right now. Could we handle this in May? And see what she says.
Anything else for Bill Rowe? Jess, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify based on some of Ed's questions. I mean, if I recall, at the end of last year, we voted in favor of the budget without cutting Robin's budget at all, even though she was offering to put cuts on the table and said, if you ever needed, you know, I can scroll that back. And we didn't ask her to do that at that time. And so I'm just thinking in this instance, why is it now not an appropriate time to say, yep, we need you to find $65,524 in the budget? Is that possible?
Are you talking about the money that got squirreled away?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is that not an option
How do
for?
I ask the questions?
No, the problem is it's the recap. They're sending it in as is. We can't change it. If we do, it screws everything up. So we're kind of like stuck with our hands tied right at this point.
So that's just not even an option
That's kind of what
either,
the issue is. It's not that we can't, it's, if we do, then we run the risk of not having the recap approved in time.
Yeah.
Even though it was mentioned at the last meeting that those who have town meeting articles would be moved to the front of the line for approval, but I don't know where that stands. But anyways, that's kind of the issue, because this would have been a joint cause. It would come off the top, it'd be a 64-36 cut and cut the budget and life goes on. But I don't know. So right now, I don't want to use free cash for this, so.
Well, if we
anyways.
need Mr. Rowe to go and find out if we have the option to wait till May, can we move to refer this to town meeting and then have him present there?
Or we could vote that we didn't have any funding presented to us, so we took no action because there's no funding provided.
That
Let
sounds,
them try
that
and
sounds
find
good.
it
I don't
between
want to,
now and a month from now.
yeah.
If we're not presented with any funding, so we vote that, I would move we vote to take, well, I don't want to jump, but, because you can still do discussion. I would move that we vote to take no action as no funding source was provided.
I'll second that, John.
And that gives them a month to see whatever they can do and
See what Karen says.
and he can talk to the treasurer, talk to the town manager, see if they can find it, because right now, they're not giving us anything. So how are we supposed to vote on it?
Yeah, well, to keep the discussion going a little bit, I mean, we could just say no, and that would mean that they have to wait till May. So that is just the same thing. It's instead of stalling our recommendation, we could just be firm about a decision that says, you didn't have the funding, sorry, you got to wait till May. And that is a different way to approach the same thing, because you could end up with the same result either way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laurie. I'm going to jump over to Harvey here, because I know he's got something to add.
Yeah, when I read the original article about the lack of funding, it said they expected us to make quarterly payments to cover this, okay? So we've got approximately 2 quarters to cover, so half of the $60,000. is what we'd have to come up with if they held us to it. It's just something to keep a thought in mind.
I believe, and he can confirm it, but I believe Bill said they've been paying quarterly based
Right.
on the original budget, not the extra 65.
I might have misread. I welcome to stand corrected. I don't think they were looking for the whole 65
I'm
all at
asking him
once.
if he'll confirm that. That's what I thought he said the other night. They've been paying based on the
We're paying
budgeted
based on the
amount.
original appropriation bill, right? Quarterly, based on the original appropriation?
That's correct.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That's correct, so,
The same amount that they already appropriated. It hasn't changed.
Okay.
They're paying quarterly.
so we're paying quarterly.
On the June,
They're paying quarterly on the amount that was appropriated, which was $65,000 short. They're not getting the extra $16,000 a quarter.
Yeah.
Maybe you misunderstood me. We owe $65,000. We make quarterly payments to Southeast Regional. We don't pay in a bulk amount, do we?
We owe an additional $65,000.
I understand we owe an additional 65. Now, I don't know if we've made quarterly payments yet on this particular budget they're talking about, this particular appropriation. My point is, and I don't know, so I'm saying, let's say the first payment was due December 1st of the total amount due Southeast Regional, whether it be $1 million, and you'd have to pay them $250,000, or you'd have to pay them $250,000 plus this one quarter of the 62. Do you get my point? In other words, we don't have to come up with the whole 62 all at once. We're making quarterly payments to them unless we've already made a couple of quarterly payments.
Yeah,
I think what Harvey's trying to say is that we're making these quarterly payments on a number. Now we're 65 short, but that 65 is spread out over 4 payments. So we're short 16 and change per payment. Is that what you're saying, Harvey?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then we can check with Mr. Rowe and see how many payments we've made thus far. Mr. Rowe, how many payments have we made on these quarterly payments? I'm thinking it would be 2.
You got the question, Bill?
Yeah, I would assume it would be 2.
All right.
Without looking it up, I would assume it would be 2.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Jess, do you have something to add to this?
Not really. I guess I was going to say in response to Mr. Lurie's idea, just the only thing that would make me nervous about that is we haven't heard yet whether or not there's a problem if we wait till May. And as Mr. Trumpio has said, we have to pay this. It's not like we can't get around paying it. And if they said we're going to initiate a lawsuit for our funds prior to May, I wouldn't be in favor of that. So I don't know. I guess I was leaning
We
towards
got till
John's
June
proposal.
30th when the school year ends.
Okay, so it should be fine. I guess that's what I'm trying to clarify. It should be fine if we wait till May?
I just got to ask Mr. Rowe a question on process. What is this considered, Bill? Is this an unpaid bill? Is it something else? Or if we move money after May 1 with whatever's left over, can we just do it? Or it hasn't even though been authorized by town meeting yet? Or what?
Bill.
What's its status?
Yeah, what is it called on its way to the May 1st opportunity to make good on it? What is it called? Like, where is it placed? Like, how is it considered like unpaid bills? Like, what is it categorized as? And what's the process to get it resolved?
Well, no, it would be a transfer from one department to another if we go the May 1st route. So it would be just, we'd find, hopefully by May 1st, we'd have a budget that would have $65,000 available, and it would just be a transfer from one department to another like we normally do. Chapter 44, Section 33B is the law that we use.
Okay. Elliot, do you have a comment on this?
I don't have, not so much a comment as a question. This particular piece of paper here, it just says various departmental budgets, and previously, is this exclusively to Southeast Regional?
Yes, that's the only one that
Thank
it
you.
was supplemental needed. Any other questions, comments, ideas, discussion, stories? Nothing? Okay, I think we still have a motion on the table, is that correct?
Yes, there was a motion and a second to take no action as no funding source was provided.
Who was the second on that motion?
Joel Wolk.
Joel Wolk was the second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Everyone here comfortable with the vote on this?
No, I'm not,
Okay.
because,
Then vote against it.
I will, but, no, because it leaves it open for town meeting or someone else to come up with an appropriation on the floor. And they'll just hit the free cash, whatever number that comes out to be, and I just don't think that's the way to go. That's just my opinion.
May 1st is plenty of time, and they're already talking about a January town meeting to take care of zoning, so I'm just saying, there's going to be more than one bite at the apple to take care of it. And this special just happened to happen. What would they have done if we didn't have a special?
Yeah, what would have
We
been done
always
if
have a
they
special.
already had it?
Oh, that's true, that's right.
Diane, you have a question, a comment?
So I like what Ed just said, but can we literally make that motion that says we're going to make a motion to refer this to after May 1st of next year? Is that a motion? Can we do that?
Well, that wasn't the motion that was presented.
No, I realize that. There is a motion on the floor, but can we amend it to say the funding will become available after May 1st of next year?
We could recommend anything, but if they present something at town meeting, that's what's going to be voted on.
Okay.
You could, you're saying.
From the Finance Committee's point of view, you gave us no funding source, how can we recommend it?
Well,
So you take no action on it and just say they didn't give us a funding source, unless you're going to give a funding source as a recommendation with another motion.
I actually like what Diane's saying,
Or
because
say that there
what
will
she's
be
trying to
funding
say,
available after May
what
1st.
she's saying is that we need to instill confidence in town meeting that we will be taking care of this before the deadline. There's going to be an opportunity for us to address this at the appropriate time. That no matter which way you go, whether your motion or Ed's motion, even though Ed didn't have a motion yet, but either way, we could make a recommendation that it's okay, folks, to just let this ride because it's just the way it is. We don't want to start using free cash for an operating budget situation, which is what would happen.
And that doesn't stop them from putting that in as the funding source.
It's true.
No, it doesn't, but we have our job is just to make a recommendation, not to twist someone's arm.
Well, what's your funding source? Budget's in May? We're 30,000 in the hole already. We've missed 2 payments already, so you're already half of the 65,000 as a delinquent bill.
Bill said that we had 99% assurance of a free cash availability. You're saying that the 1%
Which Ed
chance?
doesn't want to use the free cash.
No, we're talking about what would happen in May, not what would happen before we had a
let's
chance
just-
to figure it
We
all
have a
out.
motion and a
Just vote
second.
not to approve it, and we'll deal with it after May 1st.
Yeah.
But we have
I'm
another
going to
motion.
second, yeah, I'd like to second Ed's motion.
Well, you already
Gotta
have a
deal with
motion
John's
on the
motion.
floor that
Did
you
Ed
have
have
to
a-
take care of.
No, I
first.
don't know. We have to deal with John's motion
Ed didn't
first.
have a motion, Dave. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Of which motion?
Let's go over this again.
The motion
John.
was to take no action as no funding source has been provided.
I agree, yes, that's what I seconded, I agree.
Elliot, did you want to add something? Okay. Thank you for not adding anything. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? I don't know what that, you want to get the count, Dave?
I got 12.
1, 2, he's got 12. That's his, what is, Mark, are you yes or no? You're down. 1, 2,
Well, raise them again
3,
then, so we can get the
4.
count.
There's 4 no's.
4, 5,
There's 11 yes.
Okay. All opposed? How many we got now?
4.
Okay, well,
Wait, no, 5.
Oh, my
We just
goodness.
picked up one. Did somebody raise their hand twice? Did somebody? You raised it twice? Wait, so Chet, are you a yes or a no?
All right, let's not get ridiculous here.
All right, it's 11 to 4.
All in favor, please raise your hands and hold them up until the count is made. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11.
11.
Yeah, it's
All opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4.
okay, 11 to 4.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to,
Hang on.
yes.
Yes.
David?
Yeah,
So that was a motion to not recommend?
It was to take no action.
Take no action. Okay, thank you.
Take no action because no funding source supplied,
Because of no
presented.
funding source.
Okay, that gets rid of Article 8.
Why don't you get rid of Article 2?
Want to do Article 2? Let's go for Article 2. We were told that this would probably be dismissed.
Yes, Mr.
Discussion.
Chairman, I would recommend the same motion that we had for Article 3, that we took no action because we were told it would be dismissed at the hearing.
Take no action. All right.
We have a second? Second. Thank you, Bob. All in favor? All opposed? Perfect.
Okay.
We can count to 15.
Bob, you were the second? Yes.
Okay, that's Article 2. What do we got left? 6 and 1? And we got a trash packer or we got a fire station. Want to do number 6? Is that what you said, Ed? Okay.
Should be easy.
Everything should be easy. Article 6. Any comments, discussion? Questions? Article 6, trash packer? Somebody must have something. Jess?
Yeah, so I think this is another one where it said that the funding source was going to be free cash, but we don't have it yet. And I really don't like the idea of being asked to allocate free cash when we don't even know the total amount we're going to have, and to be, you know, we're not seeing in this the context of a capital plan. We're not seeing it in the context of the other items we might need that free cash for that might be even more urgent. There's so many things out there. I just feel like this shouldn't be brought to us during a special, and we shouldn't have to make a decision to use free cash when we don't even know how much we have. So I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. Diane?
I'm going to agree with Jess. I think this was the wrong time to bring this up. We just bought one last year. I understand about having a spare, but, and to use free cash, and that was going to be my next question. We haven't a clue as to how much it's going to be, right? This could be the entire free cash. Doubt it, but.
Thank you very much, Diane. Do we have any other discussion, comments?
Just real quick.
Thank you, Dave.
We want, real quick, the Board of Selectmen had one opposing vote for this, and that person happened to be an expert who used to be an alumnus of Finance Committee, and I believe that that person has enough expertise that I'm going to vote the same way, to be also in agreement with Jess.
So you agree with Diane and Jess?
Yes. I
Thank
agree
you,
with
Dave.
them.
Any other discussion, comments? Eric?
Just a question, again, for context for me, based on the comments I've heard. Is there a capital plan? Or is that way too big a can of worms for me to bring up?
We love cans of worms here, so I don't know. I mean, is there a capital plan?
I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
They
It's
presented.
a capital plan. They're
Yeah.
putting it together. It's a little bit in flux at this point, but they are putting it together.
Thank you.
So that
yeah,
means they
it's-
currently don't have one then, is that correct?
Well, it depends on how you phrase currently have.
Well, I know the DPW has a vehicle replacement schedule, so to speak, okay, which I've seen.
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, they have one. The police has one, the fire has
Really?
one.
Everybody, yeah, they
They're
do.
starting to put them all together and then lay them out.
I was a
in-
little confused as to why this needed to be addressed in a special town meeting. This seems to be something that would normally be seen in a annual town meeting when we start to take a look and find out what, if we want to bond it or not bond it, or how we want to pay for it. This took me a little bit by surprise. I don't really know, but I don't think that there's even if we approved it today, it's something we wouldn't get until, what did he say, 2023 or something like that?
Yep.
So,
Might not get the next one until 24 if we wait till May. Supply chain issues.
well, who knows? I mean,
All right. Thank you, Joel. Do we have any other discussion, comments?
No, I
Anything
tend to
else?
agree that, I know Bill had mentioned he expected the free cash would be there. And I agree with Jess. I hate to vote something hoping that it's there, not positive it is. And, you know, I don't, maybe we want to recommend that, vote against it and recommend they take it up at the annual, but that's just a thought. Let it bounce around in your head for a while.
Anyone have any ideas on that? Any thoughts?
well, I agree with John, and I'm prepared to make a motion that we move that this article be taken up at the May annual town meeting. And leave it at
second.
that.
I second.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, John.
Joel, that's your motion?
Yes.
Dave gets a second?
You want to repeat your motion?
Yeah, the motion is that the Finance Committee votes to recommend that this particular article be taken up at the annual town meeting in May of 2022.
I feel like we've come up against this before, and we're not allowed to make that kind of
We-
a motion inside a motion.
That's a good
for
point.
this.
Now that I
Yeah,
think about it, I think you're
don't- I
right.
think we have to just vote against it if
All
we're
right,
against it now.
friendly-
and then-
friendly
No, I
motion-
think you're right,
motion.
Jess. I think I'll withdraw that motion. I don't think I can do that, so.
All right,
I'll-
motion
I'll make a
to,
mo-
motion
okay.
to, motion to not move forward on Article 6 for a new trash packer.
We got to make a positive motion.
Yeah, make the positive
That-
motion, and then
the-
people can vote against it.
We voted to,
You can make a motion against an article.
Okay.
Jess, did you have something?
Well, this is
Say
the
it.
thing, we've run into this before, when people just look down at our votes, and if it says motion not to approve, 15-0, say, they see, oh, it's a vote of 15-0, yeah, and they think that we're voting in favor when we've said specifically
All
we're
right,
voting
well,
against. We
yeah,
confuse
I'll-
people.
I'll make it
If
easy.
Hang on a
somebody-
second, Dave,
if
hang on a
there's
second.
anyone here who's in favor of this, could you make a motion to approve it, and then those of us who
Yeah,
are
you're
not in
right.
favor will vote against it?
she's absolutely right. The motion is to approve a trash packer, Article 6.
Subject to availability of free cash, if any.
You can do that
Will
too?
you amend that?
All right,
Well,
I'll
we
take
need,
that.
we need a source, otherwise
All
it's
right,
boring.
All right.
Second it?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Hang on a
Motion
second.
to approve, if anybody's wondering, it's motion to approve based on, contingent on available free cash.
That doesn't sound right.
Because then you're,
No,
then
this-
you're,
this-
then
There's
it's,
a logic,
You're
there's a
add-
logic problem there.
But then you're adding a variable on there, though.
you can't do that either, probably. It's probably against the rules.
It's like saying, oh, we're going to have a motion to do something
You know,
if the
let's-
sun rises at a
Let's just say
certain time,
motion
you
to
know.
approve Article 6.
Thank you. I think
Trash
that's the only
packer.
thing we can do.
Because the article says from free cash, so you don't have to
Well,
designate.
it says what it says, okay.
The motion says free cash, so
Motion to approve, and who's?
So we have a
second? Who's the
motion. Do we have a second anywhere?
second? Elliot.
Elliot gets the second. All
Dave
right.
motion, Elliot.
Motion approved. Second, Elliot. All in favor? Okay, make sure you get this count, okay,
Got
Dave?
one. Heads in favor.
One.
One.
All opposed?
That's 14.
so no abstentions.
What's the count?
1 to 14. Opposed. Good work.
Okay.
Another squeaker.
This article 6 off the list.
That leaves the big one.
What do we have left? Article 1?
That's it.
Okay, Article 1. Any discussion? Oh, I haven't even finished asking this. Joel, do you have something to say about Article 1?
Yes, I actually have a few things to say about Article 1, and I'll try to limit the amount I talk about, although I have been studying what Dave Laurie has presented at past FinCom meetings, so I'm going to follow that guideline, okay? Article 1 is for the fire station. First of all, to give a little perspective to those members of the FinCom who are new members, there was at one point in time a Stoughton Public Safety Facilities Planning and Construction Committee, of which Jess Miner and I belonged. And Jess and I, it gives us the at least the background of what happened prior to what happened here, so that we can provide and hopefully answer any questions about what the stream of thought was and what we went through. On this one here, it's a little different. As I mentioned at the Thursday night meeting, apparently the article now shows 2 phases. In phase 1 is the design and construction of a new fire station to replace Station 1 at 30 Freeman Street, and that's on a plot of land that's going to be purchased on Prospect Street. And the estimated amount, based on what we were told at the Thursday night meeting, for just that fire station at that piece of land is $20 million. The second phase is to renovate the 30 Freeman Street property where the existing fire station is, to become a new fire department headquarters and emergency operations center, and then after that renovate the existing fire station's headquarters on Central Street, and those two combined is an estimated cost, as we were told, of $7.3 million. Now, on the new fire station, based on what we were told, that is now scheduled to complete and be occupied by June of 2024, which is about 2.5 years. I did go into take a look at past materials that we looked at the prior committee, as well as what's been posted on the town website, and I found a layout which I thought was a well thought out plan, drawing on the requirements of the department and the experience and expertise of the architect Doran Whittier and the owner's project manager Pomeroy Associates. Both entities have had extensive experience and expertise in public safety facilities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I think that they are they're a big plus towards this project. My own personal experience on the 30 Fremont Street was when I first moved here, and I was put on a small ad hoc building committee for minor renovations to Fire Station number 1. That was around 2013, 2014, and I served on there as a community member with Dick Fitzgerald and Steve Bates. Both, I think a number of you people know who they are. And that was kind of interesting. The building, in our opinion, and in my opinion now, is in very poor shape, and it is not suitable for a modern fire department. Even though the professional team did not provide us with a detailed budget, and they had provided the prior committee on a building that we had looked at earlier with a detailed budget, I still have good faith in them, and I believe that, in my opinion anyway, the amount appears to be reasonable. In that regard, for the fire station, I support this particular plan enthusiastically. In phase 2, however, that's not scheduled to start construction until the new station is operational, and that becomes June of 2024. And like I said, that's 2.5 years from now. I have difficulty with this for 2 reasons. My first reason is the program is not as clearly defined as the new fire station, and at least based on the articles at least based on the information that was physically given to us as opposed to what I've been able to pull out from the town website. This is work that is far in the future. From a practical point of view and my own experience in the construction industry, I think there's going to be some difficulty in pinpointing that cost to make sure that the amount that's currently estimated can actually be achieved. The other problem is the potential funding for this second phase, and my understanding is it may be from a bond, it may be from a grant, it may be from the CPC. Nobody really, yeah, thank you, a positive shrug, thank you, okay? And nobody really knows, and if phase one is higher than estimated, then the money could be sort of borrowed from phase two. Unfortunately, I was in a situation similar to that where we had multiple projects covered by the same appropriation. The first project came in over budget, and they said, well, we'll just take a little money from the second project, and it was a problem. So I feel very uncomfortable on November of 2021 agreeing to an amount or of $7.3 million for something that's going to be done in 2.5 years. The other problem that I find with this, or that I have difficulty with, is the question of on 30 Freeman Street, is this in fact the highest and best use for the building? Does the redevelopment authority and the planning board agree that this is the highest and best use? I know that in other communities where they have abandoned fire stations, other things have happened. I know some people that have been to the Natick, where the Performing Arts Center is located in their abandoned fire station, and that is quite a contribution to the town. In the newspaper over the weekend, I read that in Situate, they sold one of their old stations for a substantial amount of money, but then again, it kind of overlooked the beach, so it's a little different than this. My own personal opinion is that the solution of putting the Fire Department headquarters and Emergency Operations Center in Freeman Street is actually a very good solution. But the real question I have is, does it have to be decided at this point in time? Could this be something that could be decided at a later date, could be looked at in terms of feasibility studies? We could work with the CPC, we could work with a number of other people, the planning board, the redevelopment, to find out if this, in fact, is the best use. So, Mr. Chairman, in that regard, I'd like to note that I am contemplating right now a floor amendment at the special town meeting to actually delete phase 2 from this article. I feel that if I put that amendment forward, this will give at least, at the minimum, the town meeting representatives to make the decision as to whether or not phase 2 should be at this point in time included for funding, or if this amendment is accepted, then there would be a separate article at a future town meeting that would be more in line with what could be done and have more information. Like I say, and the reason I'm bringing this up as my amendment up is that I'm hoping that I can get two things. Number one, somebody who is a town meeting representative who will actually second that on the floor for me. And the other thing is to see if FinCom has some thoughts about whether or not this is something they want to go forward now. If the amendment passes, I will enthusiastically support the construction of a new fire station. It's needed. If the amendment, as I'm proposing, does not pass and Article 1 stays the same, I will still support Article 1, but not as enthusiastically, because I believe that the town needs a new fire station, and we are at a point right now where we're the best opportunity to do it. Like I say, it's our best opportunity to replace the Freeman Street Fire Station. The new station location provides the town with a better response time to all areas in combination with the Central Street Station. And I really don't want to miss out on being able to get this approved because of any difficulties that town meeting reps have with Phase 2 as part of this. That's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you saying you want to vote this a certain way, or you want to make the amendment at town meeting?
I have to make the amendment at town meeting. The reason I bring it up now is that a number of you whose thoughts and opinions I respect might come back and say it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I might drop it. But on the other hand, if you feel that this is a viable way of looking at the project to make sure it passes forward, then yeah, I don't think you have to vote on it. But Vaughn, if I put that amendment out there, I'm almost sure somebody's going to turn to you at town meeting and say, what does the finance committee think?
Thank you. Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I just have a technical question, but thank you for that. It's interesting, very interesting. I never even contemplated that idea. But are there any interdependencies operationally or other between the two phases that need to be considered?
Well, we have members of the fire department here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, they're too obviously, I mean, what I have seen in terms of the layout for 30 Freeman Street, or the proposed use of 30 Freeman Street, basically mimics what's currently at the Central Street Station from my own knowledge and looking at the plans and what I know about. And I guess what it comes down to is that the fire station at Freeman Street is in not a very good shape. It's not appropriate. It really needs to be replaced. On the other hand, if the fire department headquarters and emergency operations center doesn't actually happen for another year or two or three or four, I don't believe the fire department will fall into disarray. Could be wrong.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other? Of course we do. Chet?
I thought this, excuse me, Chet Collins. I thought this whole budget thing was combining Freeman Street, Station 1, and Central Street. The whole budget, because we wanted to do this because we have low interest rate. Is that correct, or am I wrong? I thought
The article's the article. I think that Joel was talking about doing it a different way. Is that correct, Joel?
That's correct. And Chet, you're correct in that one of the things that was mentioned that you have lower interest rates now. But the way I look at it is if we go out and purchase bonds at a lower interest now for something that may cost twice as much, when we finally get to it, I'm not sure we've gained anything. And I think that the difference in interest rates on a $7 million bond between now and a year and a half from now aren't going to be that different, but then I could be wrong on that too.
Okay, well, that's what I thought. That's what I read and heard, that's all. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chet. Thank you, Joel. Elliot?
Both of them alluded to one thing, is the $7 million is extra, the $7.3 million is today's dollars. And I'm not sure those today dollars, you know, it's going to be valid 2, 3, 4 years from now. So, Joel, I thank you for trying to separate it, and I think that's something that needs to be done at town meeting. I don't think we can do it here, but it certainly is a well-thought-out argument that, yes, we definitely have to get rid of Freeman Street. We need something better than that, but the best use for it is yet to come, or yet to be determined. So.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Mark?
Yes, thank you. I know I'm doing a committee here. I was wondering if we had a amount or total amount of what has been spent to get to the point where we are with the fire station.
Well, if I remember correctly, the original appropriation was about $400,000 to have a...
It was exactly $400,000.
Well, thank you. I guess I remembered it correctly. And I believe that Joel might have the answer to the question because he was on the committee with Jess, and they might know how much money was spent doing the, what would you call it, research?
No, it was a feasibility study.
Feasibility study, yes.
We paid for the architect and we paid for the owner's project manager, and when the committee was disbanded in early June, at that time, there was about 45,000 left of uncommitted funds.
Well, is that for this location or for
No,
all
this
the
is for the feasibility study, and the feasibility study was for both the fire department and the police department.
Okay, so that's just, we've only spent the 400,000, nothing else to find this location.
No, I think there was one before this.
Well, we actually,
That's why I want, how much has been spent?
okay, I'll
Think
tell
back
you.
to- I know
About
this building's been 100 years old.
350,000 has been spent so far.
Out of all,
From that appropriation.
From
There
that
was- There was one
appropriation,
before
yes.
that.
how many
that they looked at.
appropriations have we done?
No,
to
there
find
wasn't
the
one
location?
before that.
I think there was.
Mark,
It was 60 or 70 or something.
there was an article,
Yeah.
there was an article to do a feasibility study for the $400,000. As Joel said, about $355,000 of that has been spent. So that was that original article.
Now that,
But that money is not included in this article here.
Oh, I know.
I just wanted to clarify for everybody, you know.
No, I just
for
want to
your
know
own-
how much we've been spending.
Well,
$355.
This is 20, like where he's saying if we take out the 7.3 for the second phase, it's 20 million. But the actual cost of the fire station is not 20 million.
Yes,
How
it
much
is.
we've actually put in to get to this point. I want to know how much we're spending.
well,
up
the
to this point.
feasibility study
355.
hired the architect and hired the OPM, and it did go through various evaluations. It went through, what the prior committee did is they took a look at land that was available that was owned by the town throughout the town of Stoughton. We took a look at a variety of areas. We ended up taking a close look at and spending some money on the viability of using the line lumber site off of Fano Drive, but then that was decided we couldn't use that. And then we spent a significant amount of money taking a look at putting a fire station at the site of the Stoughton Armory by replacing the armory with a brand-new fire station that included a new headquarters section. So that was spent on that. We also spent some money on programming for the police department, so that we could understand what the police department needed to bring them into the 21st century. But we are not going forward with that at this point in time. I hope that answers your question about what was spent on what.
Yes, kind of, sort of. I was just making sure that, that was the 400,000. And like I said, how many articles have we used to do surveys, to do
Mark,
physical studies?
we're gonna double check right now with Bill Rowe. Bill, can you hear this?
Yeah. Hey, Bill? Bill?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a question in the Finance Committee. Mark Struck is asking about how much money has been spent on the appropriation for the feasibility study. And I know that there's going to be a follow-up question, but.
Mr. Rowe, there's another question. Were there any prior articles to this one?
Was there a prior article to study the fire station one historically going back in time? Do you have any record of that?
Give me a few minutes and I'll get right back to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while he's checking, I had forgotten. At one point in time, there was the town manager in 2013, 2014, basically put together a working group, and there was appropriation, I think, of about $70,000 to take a look at a public safety building to replace both the fire station and the police station. And we hired an architect. The architect did a number of studies and did the same thing, took a look at this land. They came to the conclusion that the best place for a public safety building was the line lumber site, and that stopped right there. So you're right, there was another $70,000 about 9 years ago.
So that's about 425 or something? 60 or 70, I think?
Yeah, I thought it might have been 60, it might have been 70.
Something around there, I can't remember.
Just to take a look at a public safety building. And I know that money was appropriated, and I'm pretty sure it was spent.
It was.
And that goes back a few years, but
Yeah.
So we're probably looking about 425 at this point, Mark. Bill's double checking it, but in the meanwhile, do we have any other questions? Eric?
Just a comment. God, sorry. Just a brief comment that, you know, I've only lived in town a short amount of time, a little over 7 years. And so I've been able to observe just a little bit of this history, kind of from the margins on the Facebook groups, various tones that are used there. And just kind of always amazed, if I can speak candidly, at a sort of sense of inertia that just keeps things from happening, particularly when it comes to the public safety building conversations that I've seen. And I just want to comment that I've been very impressed with this plan as it was presented, and I'm excited to see something tangible and achievable, and I'm eager to support it. That's all.
Thank you very much. Harvey?
Yeah, I just have a question. If this whole thing goes forth, I'm assuming that we're going to float a bond for about $20 million, and it was so stated that other funds will come in from other sources. Am I correct?
It's mentioned in the article, but as Joel pointed out, it's vague, I think is a nice word. We actually have someone here who might be able to answer the CPC question, possibly.
Oh, Mark?
Good evening. Mark Zemanian, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. To answer your question, on October 18th, I received my program administrator received an application for Freeman Street. It had some information but wasn't completed at this point, and that's part of why we have a pre-application. That application stated they would be looking for a spread on funds between $750 and $2.5 million. So they are presenting to the CPC, Robin Grimwell, our town manager, on December 1st at our CPC meeting. We'll have more information then, but for clarification purposes, there is an application.
Right, but that's only for the 30 Freeman Street site, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And not use for CPC funds for a new fire station, is that correct?
We cannot do that, that's
Thank you.
correct.
Okay, but continuing on, what I'm getting at...
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. What I was getting at is, hypothetically, at this special town meeting, it gets approved, and they go forth and float a bond for $20 million. And we, go about paying it back right away. We have this $20 million to work with, and should we at any time, hopefully, come up with a couple of bucks that we don't spend on it, we can prepay back towards that, what we borrow. So what I was trying to figure was, we're looking at a roughly $27 million project. If we capped it, let's say, town meeting was to cap it at $30 million, even though it's above and beyond, we could still be within our range. In other words, basically, if you had $4 million left over, you said to the bank, here's $4 million back. We don't reduce our payment, we reduce the amount of years you pay, and therefore reduce your interest.
That would probably be
No.
considered an expansion of the article by the town moderator and wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
No, the way bonds work in the town, you can't pay back the principal on the amount that you took down, because the way they design them is the first 10 years of the bonds are non-callable, meaning you can't pay anything off for the first 10 years.
I gotcha.
So the money will just sit in this special revenue account for the construction of the fire station. And if anything's left over at the end when it's all said and done, that money can be used for another like-kind project. And that's how you would use up that money.
Okay, thank you very much.
Except if it's a debt exclusion, I think there's unique rules around that. I think if it's a straight bond, it
Yeah.
would be different than if it was exclusion.
Yeah, but now we have a MUT, it's a half and a percentage and a percentage.
You have to bring it back the way it came in. You have to get a reappropriation, you know.
Or if there's money left over, it could go back to the taxpayers. I mean, just a crazy idea, I know.
That is
I know.
a crazy idea. That is,
Janet?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, just a question. Instead of borrowing the full amount all at one time, could we do like a short-term ban? Like borrow some and then, Joel, as he was saying, for right now, maybe not a good time to plan on phase number 2, so borrow some for Freeman Street and then borrow the rest, you know, in a few years down the road? Or do
I
you
don't
have
know.
to borrow the full amount at one time?
I don't know that we could do that here.
Okay.
Because we have the article as the article is. I think we have someone here who wants to speak.
We have to approve it, and then the Finance and Selectmen Board determine how they're going to go about funding it.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Hi, Chief Michael Carroll. Just to clarify something, I'm sure Bill Rowe will be able to have better information as far as monies. As far as how much money was spent on Freeman Street, I know the town clerk, Stephanie Carrera, said even back in 1969, although I don't know whether any money was spent when they mentioned that. If anybody goes back to 1996, definitely the MMA study, $25,000 was, it was pointed out in that study. And then I believe 2008 monies was spent as well. That was under Chief Jordan, pointing out that that station needed to be replaced and looked for some different options there. So there is a chronological history going way back. But again, Mr. Rowe will probably be able to point that out. As far as operationally, I believe, first, I believe, I'm not sure the assessed value, I want to say $600,000 or $800,000 for Freeman Street. The reason behind this was to save money for the town. I know in the previous one there were a lot of issues moving the administration to a new building. That was something that came back to Chief Laracy, and you know, we're trying to think of different options there. So we thought of the phase of making that an operational headquarters, but not an operational fire station, because obviously it's too small. But it, you know, Dorian Witter and Pomeroy really like the idea of making it really office space, and then creating that EOC, which we really need in town, and also bringing the Department of Public Health into it. The frustrating part for me, and I'm learning this, is that, and I met with FEMA a few weeks ago, is that I can't apply or get grants until the town approves it. So it's like the whole chicken and egg thing. You want to say to the town, the community, hey, we have grants. There's actually a bill on Congress in Congress right now for fire station construction. Talking to our representative for FEMA, he said the further along you are in this project, which means the town has committed to building a fire station, the better it is for you to get that. I talked to Congressman Lynch. I've talked to a few others. The day after I talked to Congressman Lynch, he called me back to say he co-sponsors that bill. And one of the priorities is any fire station over 40 years old, which I laughed and said we could probably get 2. And maybe wait longer and get 3. But it's really hard for me because I want the community to save money. That's why we went with the cheaper location as far as the 2 RFPs. We've looked at different ways. Not moving administration over to a new station made it smaller. And I'd love to save Freeman Street and have the town own it. I don't want to see it as a restaurant. I mean, I've spent 27 years there. My father worked there, my grandfather worked there, so it has some sentimental value, of course. But as I went through with Glenn from Dorman Witter, he's like, this has great bones, this is a great building. And if anybody has any history, I have the video, in 1926 when they first moved in there, it was the premier fire station in New England. There were people, fire chiefs coming from all over New England to see how this was built. And I actually found the original blueprints for it. So I think it's a great building, although I'm tentative to use the word historical. I've learned that it's not historical, but it is historic to me. I think historic to the community. And so if we can keep that, it also, with the DPH there, you know, and having the first floor as a area where they can use as well, the town can use, and then reducing the 2 bays, we open up parking, which is a huge issue, as we know down there. And it's not going to be Situate. We look out over, you know, Mr. Minucci's property. We don't look over the ocean. So, I know that. Yeah. So it's hard to say that they're going to get quite a bit of money. In the whole idea is I really have to open up the Central Street station to allow that to be operational. It's not fair to the men and women, but especially the women, that it's really hard. Like, it's really hard for them to work down there. We really can't have more than 2, and we have a program administrator who can't really use that locker room, their locker room, because it's really a bathroom with 2 lockers shoved up against, you know, between the wall and the shower, and I mean, it's really squeezed in. So, you know, it's a nice transition. Whether you decide to vote on it all at once or whether you can, I understand you have to go through your stuff, but to me, without coming with real numbers from the grants, for $27 million for really changing the infrastructure of Stoughton Fire Department, EMS, and how we respond, you know, it's, to me, I thought it was a great idea with really, you know, monies that, aside from, you know, building a big public safety building or trying to move everything into one station, I feel it operationally it works better for the town and provides better service and better coverage for the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other discussion on this? Any other comments, ideas? Eddie?
No, I'm more interested in the financing side of this, because I think it's kind of rushed. You heard the chief just mention potential new infrastructure grants. Well, they want to take all this money down right away in October because everybody's in a hurry for interest rates, which I think is a big mistake, especially if we can get grants. So you have to pass it to authorize it. There's no way around that. So we have to make a decision on up or down on the project. Then, of course, there's the funding source. Well, they want to do a 30-year bond on this project to make the math work, and the selectmen voted a 65-35 split, meaning 35% in the budget, 65% debt exclusion. And as you already know,
No, it's the other way around.
no,
No, this, just so you know, it's, debt exclusion is like an override. It's a tax increase to pay a loan.
No,
Right.
the debt exclusion
But
is for 65.
65 is the percentage of the debt exclusion.
That's right.
yeah, that's what I said.
35% is the town budget.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what he said.
That's how I heard it, too.
Anyways,
You gotta stop taking those special edibles.
and as you all know, we just passed the debt exclusion for the high school. There's the South School will be coming in the next 3 or 4 years, whatever number, another big number. And like I said, you got your tax rate, 2.5, every single year goes up 100 to 125 bucks. You have, they're gonna do the shift this year, meaning commercial property's been flat, so residential is gonna get assigned more of the levy. So you got that coming, and now you wanna dump another debt exclusion on top of that. You know, at some point, you have to live within your means, which means inside the budget. And of course, this is a big number, and it won't fit inside the budget. That's why they want to do a debt exclusion. I did the math on a 20-year and a 30-year bond, because I'm a big proponent of 20-year bonds. The number they gave in the warrant, the 1071, was for a 30-year bond. A 20-year bond is 1411, $1,411,000 and change. So you got about a, 3-something difference. But the difference in the interest rate over the 10 years, it's going to cost us another $3,911,000. Now, this committee heps and haws and complains about $1,000 within the budget. We're going to just think nothing of blowing away $3.9 million just to make the math work, to fit it in, to make the math, just to get it done. So the thinking here is a little short-sighted, especially when grants might be available. The problem is, this is the article that we have before us. We have to decide it or amend it on the floor if somebody wants to amend the funding source. I think this can fit within the budget. It gives them 3 or 4 years to make it work, to fit it in. And as I mentioned the other night at the hearing, the TIF agreements for the water fund are running off. That's $940,000 that's coming over to the general fund side. So you got $940 right away. You need $1411. You got to find a way to make it work. Either you cut the budget $500,000, give or take, over 2 or 3 years, or if they take down all the money, you're going to be sitting on $21 million. If you get a point on it, you get another $270,000 a year coming in for 2 or 3 years by the time you spend the money. There's another $500,000 you can put towards a project. So there's different ways of looking at this. But we have to hurry up and get it done. We've got to take the money down to save a quarter point on the interest rate. I don't agree with that philosophy, especially in light of the new infrastructure grants that might be available to us. But we have to pass the project. And my concern is how we're going to pay for it. I'm not in favor of another debt exclusion. I think we find a way to fit it in the budget. Yeah, it's going to be some consternation. There's going to be some budget cuts. Yeah, it's going to be hard, but it is doable. And that's how I see it.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Do we have any other discussion? Marty, we haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm Marty West. Something else you might not know about me is generally I'm the enemy of debt. I'm the enemy of debt. We already have a large exclusion, which adds to the 2.5 that we're just starting to pay. We're talking about putting another debt exclusion on top of that one. Now the first one's going to last beyond my lifetime. The second one will last beyond my lifetime. And there's more coming that will, well, my perspective is there's no such thing as a 2.5. It's meaningless to me.
Thank you very much, Marty. We have any other discussion here? I think Diane should speak.
Thanks, Vaughn. I have gotten a few phone calls from my constituents and people around town that I know who are very concerned about this piece of property and the ability for large trucks to come in and out. I voiced the same thing the other night. I'm not sure whether this is the right piece of property. I'm not sure whether, and I second Ed's business about how we're going to pay for it. I think you're right, putting another debt exclusion on everybody else now and then asking for another one in 3 or 4 years for another school, I think it's going to break a lot of people in town. As much as I would like to see another fire station, I just can't support this one at this time.
Thank you very much, Diane. Jess, do you have something to say on this?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions still lingering as well. So first is, so Ed, are you arguing in favor of supporting this, but trying to make an amendment on the floor? I guess I'm trying to...
Well, I'm in favor of the fire station project. I think it's a
Right.
great project. I like the headquarters idea. I like, it cleans up a lot of things. It's a good project. I kind of like Joe's idea. I'm a little leery about partial funding and all that kind of stuff. And we could be in recession in 3 years from now and get even better numbers, the way we're spending the money and craziness, inflation, and yada, yada. But we can't see that far away. But I'm just concerned about the funding, the way this is structured.
Me too. So I'm just trying to get
That's
some-
my concern. I'm for the project. I just, I think we should tough it out and find a way to stick it in the budget. That's just my perspective.
But do you see a path forward where we vote in favor of this and then figure out how to not, I mean, we'd be authorizing the...
Yeah, we'd have to do an amendment on the floor to the, three days ahead, write up something to give to town meeting, unless we can vote different funding sources here. I don't know if it's any appropriate or not, but, we're not happy with the current funding source. Maybe we voted a different way, or optional to town meeting's reference kind of thing, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I spoke similarly the other night that I wish we had more input in the conversation about the funding source in advance. I wish that had been a part of this. I feel like that's not fully baked yet, and it's unfortunate. But then the other question I have, which is similar to Diane's, is just the property, the site itself. I guess I still have questions that I'm hearing from people in town as well, is this is in a floodplain, there are wetlands. I just want to know that if we put a fire station on this site, we're not going to be dealing with floods and mold and everything else. And Mr. Tisdale isn't here tonight, but I would have preferred to have had a little bit more information on this site, with feeling certain that this site is going to work. Because, we had the Glen Echo pushed on us one town meeting in a rush to try to get it done, and then everybody was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And even Mark said, no, that's not going to work. Then we, focused on the Armory and realized, no, that's not going to work. And it's hard after 2 times of going through that to not feel like we're in the same position again of, well, we got to make something work, so let's just make this property work so we can do it. But if it really isn't going to work, that's a fact and a reality that we would then face, and that would be bad. I want to hear that it is definitely going to work and that we're not going to have a problem with the wetlands and the floodplain. I don't feel like people in town are 100% convinced of that yet, and I'd like to hear a little more on that. And of course, I'd like to have a better sense of the funding side of it. So those are my 2 hesitations. Otherwise, again, like everyone else, I really like the idea of a centrally located station. I want to move forward ASAP. I think it's terrible that we haven't been able to make something happen already. But I'm struggling, and I feel like we're being forced to make a decision when we don't have all the answers yet in front of us, and that's difficult too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. Do we have anything else? Dave, do you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vaughn. I'm very much in agreement with both Ed, Jess, and Marty. And I just want to add to what they're saying. Because, first of all, we don't have a very well-worded warrant. There's serious problems with it because, first of all, we don't have the 35-65 split. We don't have a way to get cash even paid, because I know Marty likes cash and less debt, and I agree with him. And there's no way in what I've read that you could actually get cash into this article. I haven't seen any way in which you could even get grant money added to this article. It's 100%, $27,300,000 borrowed with 65% on the backs of the taxpayer with the debt exclusion, which I call an override, because I'm not going to see the end of this thing either. So to me, it's an override. De facto override, that's what that is. So my thinking is that we do have the ability inside the budget without hurting services. I don't think we have to make any cuts. I've done research to show that they're not spending all the money that's coming in, and I'll tell you why the money's coming in. Is because it was announced the same week, on Tuesday night before we had our meetings, that our census came out. The 2020 census numbers just came in. We picked up 2,300 new residents in the town. That increases our tax revenue coming in, and it's proven out in that the last 3 years, we've been getting more money in than they could even spend. We're over appropriating in addition to the extra 1.5 that they keep asking. But there's already a base of at least $1.5 million to 2 million or more that's already coming in. It's flooding in. So there is a source of money without hurting services within the budget. We don't have to borrow on the backs of the taxpayer. And by the way, we also already know that our percentage of debt inside our budget against the whole fund is only 3% and dropping. We've, under Ed Trunfio, we've always had a philosophy of trying to get to a stable number of like 4% in and about. Well, it's already a whole point. Think about what 1 point is. 1 point in the budget is over $1 million. We're at 110 million. So 1% is $1.1 million. So that's how much extra room there is capacity-wise to start borrowing. You do $1.1 million over 20 years, how many, what is that? That's 22, what is that, $22 million? So what are we talking about? We're talking about revenue that's there without hurting services inside the budget. We're talking about debt capacity because we're going down and further down in our debt to general fund. So there's capacity to borrow. Why are we talking about a debt exclusion or override? It's absurd to me. So I'm in total agreement with everybody who just spoke. I think we should find room for cash being spent combined with complete inside the budget spending. And that's, and by the way, when it comes time for a South School, the same story is going to come back. I'll be right here, you know, fighting to get the school the same kind of funding because I believe that there's more than enough with the growth. And by the way, they kept saying to us, we have to buy a high school because it'll expand the tax base. They said we have to get a sewer because it'll expand the tax base. They said we had to buy the Glen Echo and on and on and on. All those investments were to increase our tax base. Well, guess what? It worked. We have an increased tax base. Now it's time to reap the rewards, give dividends back to people without hitting them with another debt exclusion. All right, that's what I had to say.
Thank you very much, Dave. We have any other discussion, comments, stories? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Anzavino, Precinct 4, Finance Committee Vice Chair. I'm going to reiterate what I said the other night. I love this concept. The new fire station, refurbish the Fire Station 2 back to what it really was supposed to be and to set up the EOC and everything, the offices at Freeman Street. And I do like that. I like the concept very much. What I don't like, and I'll try and remember them all because there's many things that I'm concerned with here. Financing is one. You know, just think about where we are today. We have no appraisal. They might have it by the end of November. We have no 21E for this property, but they're looking at it. They took a test pit near the oil tank, and they're waiting for the test results. We were supposed to be starting town meeting already. Today was their proposed first day. And between the moderator, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, the chair and myself from the Finance Committee and the town manager met to see if we could come up with a better timeline based on something the chair had put together that seemed to be a little more realistic. Now, even though one of the selectmen, when they voted the date for this, was convinced that the charter and the dates that would have been provided were more than sufficient. Here we are, November 8th, which is when they were supposed to start, and we still don't have all the information we really need to vote on this. It's a selectman policy that before they insert an article, they have all the pertinent information. I'm paraphrasing. I could pull it up if you want. I'm paraphrasing. That all the pertinent information has to be submitted, a complete submittal, for the board to insert it, and that pertinent information would be what would allow the selectmen and town meeting to give a fair vote on an article. No other committees, just the board and town meeting. Well, you can't buy property without an appraisal. They don't have one yet. We've been told they've known this since the beginning of August, but we might not have it till the end of November. 4 months? What's taking so long? Why is there such a delay trying to get that? A number of things have come up. Just mentioned about the concerns of the property. There's a good portion of these properties that are in the 100-year flood zone. The driveway actually comes through a flood hazard area. The intermittent stream does kind of stop just on each side. Well, it goes across. It does have a culvert, but the wetlands around that just kind of stop on each side of the driveway. I believe you heard the chief the other night. He mentioned it. It's a concern I had. When they built Station 2, they were warned. That's a wet area. And what happened? They built it anyway, and for 5 years it sat. The only one in there, I think, was the chief at the time, the deputy, and the admin. Those are the only people that were in there because, you know, it was all the mold and everything. You couldn't sleep there, you couldn't stay there. So they were the only three. I'm waiting for them to come back with medical issues and come after the town for putting them in the building. So do we learn from our past? With all this that's here, why? I mean, there are other properties. I'm just not convinced this is the best property. I know that from the 2020 study they did, there was another property the town already owns that does give better coverage. This property leaves the south part of town, a good portion of the south part of town, with an over 8-minute response time. Think about it. I don't know if you might live there or not, but it's the southern part of town. It's a concern. There was an issue raised, we all got the email, about the sale of this property. Now, what you heard the other night was they checked with the police and they checked with the DA, and the buyer is not part of the investigation. What they failed to say was, no kidding, nobody said it was the buyer. It's the person who actually signed off on the sale for the post that has come into question, whether he had the legal right to do so or not. That's the problem. Why do we walk into something if we're really not sure what's going to happen with that? And there were some other issues with the sale and so forth. I'm concerned that the LLC, the 400 Prospect Street LLC, was created on April 20th of 20. The property sold May 8th of 20, but it went to an individual, not the LLC that was created with that property name. Why? The RFP came in on July 29th, signed by the individual. I asked this the other night. Are we dealing with an individual or are we dealing with the LLC? And the answer was, well, you know, an LLC is done. I know why people make LLCs. The point is, the RFP requested if you were a company or an individual. This kept, every place this was signed that I saw was by the individual and not for the company. I think maybe on one thing with the environmental, he might have signed off for the company. But it just gives me pause to say what's going on. And I don't want to steal the thunder, but if you look at the RFP was sealed until July 30th. The RFP that came in that they chose was signed on the 29th. Yet they put out for a survey of this property before the bids were open, or supposedly open. Not only did they pull it out for the bid, it was responded to, and they've moved forward with doing the survey. It was before this was supposedly even opened. The two components of the committee who reviewed this were on August 2nd and August 9th, and that's when they made their recommendation. How could they be surveying something that wasn't even the known proposed property 2 weeks ahead of time? You know, something just doesn't sit right in my mind when I start going through all these little things. It just sticks with me that something just doesn't smell right. It doesn't pass the smell test to me. And again, I'm not positive this would be the best property. We do own other properties. This property was purchased for $400,000, and they're looking to, you know, it's just he's asked for $1.1 million. Why not? He knows what it's being used for. Why wouldn't you? Even though it was assessed for $800. Assessed for $800, why would somebody sell it for $400 if the assessment was that high? We were told, well, the assessment, that's usually for us. You know, the appraisal usually comes in higher. Even more so, why would you be able to buy something for $400 that was assessed for $800 and probably worth more? How does that happen? Was the town not aware that this was for sale? They didn't have a shot at buying it for $400? I don't know. As I say, some things just, when you look through it and you read through it, and I think some of the RFP, I think there were some things in there that were a little deficient. Maybe they chose just to overlook it. You know, and if you've read through the 198 pages we got for this whole article, you probably saw within the RFP. Yeah, there were questions that were asked that weren't really answered, or they were answered one way and then they seemed to say something else. I'm just not convinced that this is the best way to go about it. I think the article should have been bundled into 3 separate parts. It should have been for the new fire station, it should have been for the renovation of Freeman Street, and it should have been for the renovation, if you will, of Station 2. They didn't do it that way. The selectmen voted to fund this 65-35 of the 21 million, not the 27.3. The article is to borrow the 27.3. Now, that's the article we had. And those that were at the hearing the other night, you know, I got chastised a little bit by the town manager because I said we didn't have what she said she was reading from. And she said, well, they've been trying to fix this as we go. That's why we have, I think, 10 versions of this warrant. We still don't have the final version that I'm aware of. Although, according to the emails, we got one tonight that was dated a few days ago. For something that was so important, okay, and believe me, I know Freeman Street has to be replaced. There is no doubt about it. It's a shame that our first responders have to use that station in the condition it's in. And nobody will convince me any different that it shouldn't be replaced. But if this was so important to get this done, why isn't it ready? Why isn't all this information available? I think Mr. Trumpio mentioned it. I believe Jess has mentioned it. It just seems like they're trying to rush it through and get it done. And it needs to be done, but you know, it's that important. It should be done properly. To me, there's so much out there that hasn't been answered. How do you vote to buy a property when you don't even know what the appraisal is going to be and they've given you a price for it? They're not allowed to buy it until they have an appraisal. And if they've known about this since August 3rd when they gave that presentation over at the high school, why is it they're not expecting it until the end of November? Yet they originally wanted to start this town meeting tonight. Something isn't going together here, not in my mind. I might not be the brightest light in the, brightest bulb in the light, but something just doesn't seem right. I deal with enough construction projects over the years, and I've worked on things from nuclear power plants down to pulp and paper mills, small things to billions of dollars. Something doesn't sound right. If we tried to propose this to do work like this, we wouldn't get jobs. So while I commend the concept, I love it, I think it's a great way to go forward, I cannot support this article as it's been presented to us. I just don't think they've done their homework. I think it's been sloppy, and I just can't support what's here. They should have separated the 3 so you knew when they were going to do it, what they were planning to spend on it. There's nothing in this motion talking about the extra $6.3 million from the $21 million they voted to fund versus the $27.3 that it's going to cost. There's nothing in here about the ARPA grants, and I know Chief Carroll mentioned it. There is legislation to get something going similar to the MSBA to do it for public safety buildings. Although at this time they don't have any funding for that either. Similar to some of the articles we're seeing tonight. This is a great thing, but we have no funding. And I certainly do hope that they pass that legislation and get something going like that would help the towns with the public safety buildings as they have with libraries, as they have with schools. It's about time they did something for the first responders as well. With that, thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman. I just hope you all consider some of these things when you look forward to how we're going to respond to this article. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. John? Harvey, you have something?
Yes, I just got a question. Having looked at the numbers for the 3 properties they looked at, I saw another property that came in on the evaluation a little higher, but the person wanted almost $2 million for it. That was their bid when the bids went out. not knowing, so I'm asking for my edification. Hypothetically, the person wanted 1.9 for 2 lots of land. Does the town ever go back in a case like this and say, tell you what, we'll give you 1.5 and call it a deal? Or do they just go and say, okay, you said 1.9, we'll either take it or leave it? Does anybody know?
I might be able to answer that question.
Thank you very much, Joel.
World of government bidding.
We went out and when the building committee was in session, or active rather, we actually went out with an RFP for land on Park, and then we got one response, and that was the land on Park Street, just across from where Ash Street is. Yeah. Yeah, so they had put that land out for sale for $2.4 million. That's what it was generally put out for. When we put out the RFP, they responded with $2.4 million, okay, which the town said, we won't accept it because the appraisal of the land is going to be so far below that it would be ridiculous and we just can't do it. To answer your question, it's my understanding under the state procurement laws that if you go out and you ask for bids for land and somebody comes in and says, I will sell you my land for 1.1 million, you're stuck with the 1.1 million. You can't go back to them and bargain with them to answer that question, because we asked that question to the procurement officer, and she researched it to make sure that she was certain about that.
Okay, you answered my question perfectly.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Thank you.
John, I was kind of surprised in the article that they put in a new fire station on Prospect Street, which is in the article. If they had put in the article a new fire station and just left it at that, would you find that more acceptable?
If it had been written that way,
Yeah.
one of the first questions people are going to ask is, where you putting
Where's
it?
it going to put it? Yeah, I understand that.
So, hypothetically, if it had just said, we want money for a new fire station, that would have been one of my questions. Well, where do you plan to put it?
Right.
Knowing that this is what they're proposing and how we got here, that hypothetical goes out the window, because it might have been fine if they had come in that way originally, but I probably would have been pressing to find out where was it and why isn't it in here?
Okay.
So, you know, for a multitude of the reasons that I have mentioned already, I'm very concerned with this particular piece of property and the way that they put this together. Like you said, like you were talking about making an amendment to take out Part 2, yet there's nothing really here that indicates the Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3.
No, it was explained to us.
We
Yeah.
were explained the other day, but again, it's what's written, that's what you're voting on, and I think they could have done a much better job bundling this in the 3 separate.
Well, I'm not sorry for the little cross chatter here, Mr. Chairman. I'm not disagreeing with you on that, John, but I do know that the other property that was, they received bids on, which is 850 Park Street, if I remember correctly, I happen to personally like, only because it was a fire station that was literally right on Park Street and emptied out right on the street.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I was somewhat disappointed when they couldn't come to an accommodation
Sure.
on that particular one. So I'm not sure how to move forward on this. I guess my first question to you, Mr. Chairman, is that does the Finance Committee feel that my proposed amendment is suitable or something that we should just forget about?
To you, Vaughn, if it's all right.
Yes, Dave?
The point is that there is a dollar number, because while John's saying the 2 phases aren't explicit in the article. There's
three phases.
Three phases, but it's sort of two, kind of, the third one's kind of rolled into the second. But the point is there's a dollar number. So to get to your idea of a motion to shrink it down, You'd have to come up with a different number.
Well, the
because
number, they
that's the
gave us
do-
that number on Thursday night, $20 million.
Right, so as long as you could put a value on your change, you're fine.
Well, that's the answer.
That's the answer in my opinion. That's
The
how
amendment that I would write would take out everything that's included in Phase 2, and change the dollar amount to 20 million.
Yeah, as long as
That
it's
would be my amendment.
Yeah, as long as it's articulated.
You're talking about amending on at town meeting on the floor.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Unless
outside
the
of.
select board
Theoretically-
meets ahead of time and
theoretically-
says, sounds like a great idea.
Theoretically, you could do that
But-
at town meeting. I have a couple, we can take more discussion on this. I had a couple
Mr.
of-
Chairman, do you have any questions?
I have a couple. One of my issues with this is, as was stated by several people, is the appraisal. I'm concerned the appraisal comes in under the ask on this. This is dead in the water anyway, and we're right back to square one, because the seller is going to say, I don't care what the appraisal is, this is what I want, which means we go through all this, it's dead. That's one of my issues. The appraisal, we found out today that there was an offer to do the appraisal on September 30th. I guess the town went out to try to get an appraisal. And on October 18th, that was signed by procurement, and the purchase order was issued on October 25th. The original RFP had a due date of July 30th. And as was stated by a previous speaker, John, there was an RFQ for a survey of 400 prospect. There was a quote issue, 7/22, quote due by 7/30, and there was a response from Riverhawk Environmental on 7/25. That was prior to the RFP ever being submitted or opened, because the RFPs weren't open till July 30th. All that aside, it's a little troubling to me that we didn't bother to try to get an appraisal until October, when we had gone out for a survey in July, knowing that we need an appraisal to buy the property. That's one of my concerns with the whole appraisal thing. And I agree with a lot of the other discussion here tonight as far as financing and that sort of thing. I just wanted to throw that in there. I also agree with Joel as far as the, I guess I'm going to use the phrase the bundled article. It makes it a little sticky, I guess, the way it's all going across there. So just wanted to throw that in there. Anybody else have any other discussion?
Just to follow up with what Joel had mentioned about what he liked on Park Street, being right on the road. That's one of my, one of the things I look at here is, how far behind all these houses does this thing sit? And it's offset. As far as the driveway, it does come in and it's offset. And I don't know how far back this is. If that's 33, I mean, this is whatever, few hundred feet. Yeah, I got it. I'm looking at it. It's a few hundred feet back. The driveway's not straight in. It is offset, and it's behind a residential area. I just can't get behind this particular piece of property. It isn't visible. I think it should be, and but that, from what you brought up on the other one, why you liked it, that was one of the issues with this as well. So,
Okay.
you got Bill?
I think we have Bill, but thank you, John. I think that, I think the men and women of the fire department deserve better, and they deserve to have a plan presented that had more information. That's just my view. I really think that we need to do a fire station. They deserve better than this plan, in my opinion, but that's just what I think. I would hope we would come with a plan or an appraisal and everything we laid out for us. But I think Mr. Rose here on the phone.
Hi, Bill.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so the earlier question, did you have any answers on the work that was done already with the feasibility of earlier years combined or separate?
I found two. There was the Article 41 from May of 19. It's Project 10304. That was the big public safety feasibility study. We've spent $341,570.
Oh, okay.
341,570. There was another one, Article 69 from May of 2013, for the same thing, the same scope apparently. We spent $58,000 on that. And there were various things in the master plan, design work for repairs and renovations to the Station 1. I don't have that number readily available. It's part of the overall master plans that came out.
That wasn't part of the question.
All right, so all in, without the master plan number, what are we looking at between the two? What's that number?
Around 400,000.
400,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, 399,570.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. Do we have any other questions, discussion? Eddie?
I just have a question for the chief. Is there any urgency or concerns whether we vote for this now in December or wait till May? When a lot of the questions brought up tonight will kind of probably be answered between now and then. And maybe the grant money's available, it gets passed by Congress or the state, all their stuff they're working on. Things get a little bit clearer. Is there any plus or minus to waiting?
So, yes, in talking to Dave Parr from FEMA, it is a concern of mine because they're going to award the towns or municipalities that have already either in the process, the town has definitely voted on it, or they're in the middle of building. So that's who's going to get that money, and it's for fire stations only. It's not for public safety. It's for fire station construction only, this bill that's on the floor right now. So, yeah, it is a concern of mine. It's also a concern of mine because, you know, like I said, I've been here for 27 years, and this has been kicked down this can has been kicked down the road. And to a lot of points here, I understand the concern of the property. You know, as far as funding, you know, we presented a couple different ideas to the select board. They voted 5-0 to move forward with this one. So that was really, you know, it was presented, and this is their, you know, their vote. Yeah, I walked the property with Mark Tisdale. I think he did a pretty good job the other night in answering. I know people have concerns about, you know, whether the apparatus fits. We used to go down to the American Legion all the time for responding to calls. I mean, we know what it was. So we've been down there. Our apparatus has been over that numerous times. You know, and as far as 850 Park, when they came back and gave, you know, they sliced a little sliver off, they had us, so we didn't have that squared lot. They had a little rectangle for 1.7 that they were willing to give us, but not let us touch the other part, because obviously they were going to build that out. That was their idea. Or we could have bought, you know, that was the second RFP that came in. So my concern is that, yeah, we push it off, and then this is something, it's a critical gap. And to the point of covering South Stoughton, you know, I went and drove that property, I looked at that, I've known about it for a while, but to me, again, I go back to the map. Look at the amount of life safety around the Park Street Prospect area, and look at Washington Street. If you go left, there's very little community houses there. It's really just a lot of buildings, unless you cut up, you know, towards Atkinson from Washington Street. And just so you know, Station 2 covers a lot of that area for South Stoughton. So when you see the 8-minute response from there, that's not the 8-minute response from number 2. So
Oh, that map was a combined coverage for putting in a new station and Fire Station 2, taking them both into account, that 2020 study.
So it was 8 minutes to The end of Washington Street? I didn't specifically see that because I never think, we'd be taking 99% of our calls would be coming out of that area and turning right. And so this is the area, if given 3 stations, yeah, I would love to triangulate the town, but we've been waiting a long, long time for just get 1 station. And Station 2 was also built over a contaminated area, right? So, you know, as far as I know, there's no contamination here, but they had to put a membrane underneath that to protect it. Yeah, so it was contaminated as well. You know, we talk about wetlands, but was a contamination there. We had our concerns. And a lot of that mold came from, they put in residential HVAC systems that couldn't handle the humidity. So the mold built up in the vent system. They put in residential rather than commercial HVAC system. That was a big problem there that caused moisture and caused the mold. So I think it was a combination of that. You know, I do have concerns as far as that because when Dave Parr said to me, the further you were along in this process, you go higher to the list because they want to make sure that the town is committed to it. So, you know, I would love to come to the town and say, hey, yeah, we have 50% of this through grants, but they don't do it like that. They have to vote on it, move forward. I'm in a fire chief's officer program up the academy. I have one other fire chief who's in the middle of building right now, and they said you would be probably the first to get it or one of the first to get it. So that's my concern with the timeline. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, just one other question. What's the timetable on awarding those? This is a state grant or a federal grant?
So there's a couple of them, but this one would be the federal. This is the big one. It's the federal one. It's fire station only construction. And what I liked at it, through looking at Fire Engineering Magazine and when it was presented, was that one of the criteria is that you have a fire station that's over 40 years old. That's where they start. And I was very excited about that because it was just, you know, as you know, when you go for grants and you look at where they choose their priorities, and that's where you target.
Right.
Yeah, so that to me was like, if that was almost their number one, it probably was their number one, that made me really interested in this and where it is. And it's, you know, it's in, I believe it's in the Ways and Means Committee now, so.
Is this unique to Massachusetts piece of the pie, or is it the whole country, anybody over 40 years old?
It's the whole country, but you got to realize that the Northeast is probably the area where fire stations are of the oldest. You know, and talking to some people, they were definitely looking to target the Northeast in the older areas. Arizona, as you know, every time they build a new community, they put in a new fire station with it. It's probably not really going to touch out there. It's really about up this way in this region.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion, questions, comments?
I have a closing comment if I could.
Sure. Thank you very much, Joel.
All right, thank you.
hang on.
Sorry,
I want to assure the fire department that I personally think that the concept of taking 30 Fremont Street and making it into a new central headquarters is an excellent idea, and I'm totally for it. I'm only questioning how we're going to bundle it and when we can take a look at it and how we can get a better and more accurate cost estimate. I think that this is a project that should go ahead. I get a sense that unless somebody says otherwise, that when I make my floor amendment to unbundle this project, that if they turn to you, Mr. Chairman, and say, what do you think, that you look at it favorably. That's what it sounds like anyway. I could be wrong. But I think I'm going to go forward on that. I would like to make one other comment, especially for people who might be listening or watching. In the past 25 years, the town of Stoughton has done 5 major construction projects. Those 5 construction projects all had community oversight through a building committee. The last two projects, the high school and the library, turned out to be very successful. And in my own personal and professional opinion, one of the reasons why is on both of those projects, there was an owner's project manager that looked out for the best interest for the town and has an enormous amount of experience in the particular type of building that was being done. This time, it looks like there will be no community oversight that I can foresee or see on this particular project. I don't see that personally as a deal breaker. That's fine, and I think that all the decisions that will be made by the architect or the recommendations will be looked at carefully by the town manager and her staff. I would have no problem with that as long as especially the owner's project manager stays the same. I feel, and I could feel very confident that whatever project comes out of it will be of the highest quality and will be the best for the money, and we will get our money's worth. And Chief, I will actually take a look at the HVAC system on the new building, and if it's residential furnaces, I will scream like holy hell to make sure that doesn't go in there. I've never seen that in all the years I've done public construction. It's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I know, and it's the same problem, Cynthia. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, Joel, I have just a point of information. There is something called a sense of the meeting vote. It's not a binding vote. It's not like a formal thing. You just ask, does anybody feel good about this idea? And you just get a sense, have everybody vote. Do they like the idea or not like the idea?
Well, that's kind of the idea about my amendment. I was looking for a sense of the meeting here. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm, so if you want to make that motion, I'll second
All
it.
right, I would like to move to see if the Finance Committee will give me a sense.
Hang on.
Sorry, go ahead, Vaughn.
What are you making a motion to do? What?
A sense of the meeting vote. It's just an informal vote to just say, how do you guys feel? Do you guys like the idea or not like it? It's not like a formal motion.
Why don't we wait and see how the committee votes on this article?
All right,
See,
Eric?
I'm okay with that.
Just to see, you know?
Eric has something to add here.
Yeah, well, I actually had a question just based on all the information that I've
you.
been having to digest, which is a wonderful education from all of you. Thank you for that. So I'm, looking at what we have in front of us, and this is definitely rooted in the fact that the article has been a fluid piece of writing. And Ed, if I understand it correctly, a huge issue, well, for more than just Ed, is the fact that the proposed motion language in front of us only outlines debt. Whereas, the article summary itself seems to have language that is more flexible, other forms of financing. And I'm just curious, do we have any sense of if the actual motion that's going to be before town meeting will reflect the article language ahead? Because, these are two different paragraphs substantially. And if the motion that does not come to town meeting, sorry, let me try to phrase that question differently. If the motion before town meeting is what's in front of us that only includes debt, is that an amendment that can be made on the floor to include the language that's above from available funds in the Treasury, if any, including but not limited to, et cetera, et cetera? Is that a floor amendment that could be made at town meeting? Is that question clear? I'm just curious.
Anybody that meets the time frame of getting an amended motion to the, if you get it to the town moderator a couple of days ahead of time, whatever, anybody can put in a motion.
Okay.
A different, an amended motion. You're going to want to make sure you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. This isn't going to be a simple one if you're trying to break it out or bundle it differently or what have you, in my opinion. But I mean, any of these could be, and just something to think about too is, they are talking about having another one in January just to take care of the zoning, that downtown zoning. And I mean, if that's a serious consideration, that gives them a little time if they really want to, get their act together and get all this information and bring it back in January if they have to. You know, right now, I just don't think they have all the information they should have had, so you could take a look at this and know what you're voting on. You know, that's all. So, I mean, it's something to consider as well. And Joel, the only reason I say wait till I mean, if this gets approved, what difference does it make? If you're right, if it gets turned down, then obviously they'd be looking for a different one. But that was the only reason I said you might want to wait until you see how the committee votes.
That's fine with me.
Yeah. You know.
I mean, I guess.
But yes.
Maybe the clearer question, like for Ed and those worried about how it's just, I mean, if the motion language itself was actually the language above in the article summary.
Yeah, we vote on motions, though.
No, but I'm
Yeah.
saying if the motion language was the same, or, I'm not asking this correctly, I apologize.
Well, no, it will be different. The motion by, we'll say the select board who presented this, they will read a motion,
Yeah,
whatever it's going to be. It may be similar to this, it could be a little bit different. Then other people, other town meeting members could have amended motions to that motion. So you won't know that till the night of town meeting.
Yeah,
I guess what I'm asking is, would you feel better about it if the motion language itself included more than just debt? That's what I'm just trying to understand.
Well,
y'all's
the verbiage kind of says everything. You can use debt or any other sources there too. That's like covers everything sort of thing. It doesn't you can't get all hung up on the,
Okay.
Well, we haven't seen that language yet.
yeah, it's
That's
supposed
what I
to,
was saying.
if it's like all the other ones we do, it's, or any other source, yada, yada,
Yeah,
yada.
just
They have a whole-
understand, Eric, too, like
what I'm getting my head around.
fundamentally, this is a recommending body. And
Right.
what'll happen is that the petitioner or petitioners will come up and they'll make their pitch to the entire body.
Right.
Then they're going to come to us and say, what was your recommendation? And we're going to say, well, at that point in time, this is what we recommended, but we want you to know, this is the spirit of what we meant by them not having this information, or why we prefer you not vote in favor of it, X, Y, or Z, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We have the ability to make a recommendation on the floor, either in concert with the petitioner or as opposing the petitioner, either way.
Yeah,
But we have the ability to make that recommendation.
want to make sure I grasp.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing you can't do if you wanted to amend a motion is you can't expand the scope of the article.
Right.
So, you know, you just can't go bigger and better.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try, some have
Make 'em-
tried,
but to Joel's point, you can make it smaller.
Right.
So
you
that's.
can make it smaller, you just can't expand it, exactly.
Okay. I think that helped. Thank you.
You good with that now?
I think so for now. Thank you.
Okay, so
Appreciate it,
you
gentlemen.
can't expand the scope, so don't double the cost
Oh,
of the fire
I
station.
would never. Don't you worry.
Any other question? Oh, Janet, question, comment?
I have a question.
Janet.
One
Question.
quick comment, maybe not quick, but I fully support the new fire station. However, as Jess mentioned, the wetlands, I find that a little disconcerting. And then, John, thank you so much for all of your input. The fact that things aren't clearly spelled out in the warrant, I have a hard time supporting that. The appraisal, I find disturbing, and procurement. So I learned a lot tonight, and I thank you for all of that, but I think this kind of changes my thoughts and views on the fire station for right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments, discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Can
Yes,
we,
Eddie?
can we split the vote on the approval of the fire station concept and then the funding source as a separate vote? Or do we have to do the whole thing as one,
I think you have to take the article as it sits.
as it sits?
I mean, you can certainly, I think you could make a statement if it, you know, as far as, say you vote the article down, there's nothing that would prohibit you from saying that, you know, in general, we agreed with the concept, but with the lack of information or the disagreement with the funding or whatever, you could come up with something to put in as a statement, I suppose, if you wanted to explain. I'm just saying, if you did vote it down, you can always explain why. You can certainly say you know, you do like, I think most of us like the concept, the way they're going. And it's just, I honestly don't think they were ready. And we could certainly account for that, Ed. And I think we're going to have to stick around and go over this.
I have a question.
But,
We have another question?
Jess,
Sorry, over here.
Jess?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not this is an instance where the kindest thing we can do is to take no action because we didn't have enough information at the time to take the vote. Simply because then at least there's more time until, you know, for some of these things to emerge, and then the case to be made, you know, we can explain our concerns about the inadequacy of the information we had and why we didn't vote on it. You know, like to John's point, it's hard to vote on this when there's these outstanding pieces of information.
No,
Dave?
I'm sorry, but a no action means you're not making any recommendation. And when we
Correct,
were
that's
making
what
all,
I'm
remember when we were coming up with those, you know, grandiose ways of trying to say the same thing, was to say unanimous no because of X, Y, and Z. It was a no vote, and here, you know, it's precisely because of this, this, and this. It allows you to do that when you say no.
Thank you, Dave.
You know. Yeah.
Harvey?
Gee, the silent one. I want to say, I definitely feel we need a new fire station. No ifs, ands, or buts. I like what Ed said about finding the sources through budgeting, as well as David did. If it's possible, I'm 100% behind it. I don't know how we could go about saying, we love this, we want a fire station. Whether we like the Prospect Street property, we like the Park Street property, or something else. If it comes down to the fact that the decision is that the Prospect Street property is wetlands, and the Park Street property is more desirous, and yes, there's a big difference in price by like $800,000, but when you're talking 27 million, what's $800,000? And bear in mind, at the same time, my previous discussions with people, I'm not a friend of the property owners at Park Street. But we are talking something we're going to have for many, many years. If $800,000 is going to cause you to take a secondary piece of land to build this beautiful firehouse, I think you're making a major mistake.
Yeah,
Okay? But at the same time, I would like to convey the fact somehow to town meeting, yes, this committee is in favor of a brand-new firehouse, but we may not particularly care for the plans the way they were presented to us.
I think I have
Thank
the
you, Harvey.
process. I think I have an idea for a process, if I can. I think I have an idea. It's really, I think, down to three choices. Either yes, because you like everything about it, this motion. You like the location, the project, the funding, everything. You're all in. Okay, that's one vote. Another one is no vote because I don't like the funding, and the other one is a no vote because I don't like anything about the article at all. I think of it as being like broken down to those three.
Are you trying to say we're having a multiple choice?
I think we have to get through where the majority is on those three. I think if we know where the most votes are going to come from, I think that's where we end up.
I have a
Do
statement.
we have any other discussion? Eddie?
Yeah, this is, I'm going to phrase it. I think this is one of those, we're getting to the point where you kind of got to hold your nose and kind of do it, because we've been at this for years and years. We're not getting anywhere. We have a good project outline. The property's a little squishy maybe, but this is what it is. We can't change that. If they do their diligence between now and town meeting and something comes up and it's no good, then so be it. We can find another piece of property. But the mojo is here, it's building. We got a shot at a couple of grants that may or may not have in 6 months or a year from now. And we just fiddle and diddle all the time, and it's just, even though I don't like the funding source, we can take a stab at that on the floor to change it. But it's just, we got to stop fiddling and diddling. That's how I look at it.
Thank you very much.
I must say,
Danny.
I'd have to disagree with you. You have to vote something good, bad, or indifferent, you got to vote something. To me, that wouldn't be fiscally responsible to say, well, this is what we got, and even though I got to hold my nose, I'll vote for it. I just don't think that's the proper approach. That's just me.
Thank you, John. Diane?
Diane Dolan. Actually, this question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief. Will this particular design fit on that Park Street property?
On the Park Street property?
So yes, absolutely. We, like I said, we shrunk the footage, the square footage, but it actually fits quite well. And because it's a fire station, just an operational fire station, I think the public safety, the other fire station, not the public safety building, the other one needed 60-something parking spaces. This one only requires 35, so it fits nice. And when I walked the property with the town engineer, Mark Tisdale, because, I asked about the land and how it fits. And for 15 years prior to coming here, his expertise is actually in wetlands and redesigning them. So he was very confident and had some great ideas. But this fit quite well on that property.
I remember when the whole Station 2 was built, and everybody in West Stoughton said it was all wetlands. My second question, I guess, is kind of procedural. Because the article says to build a new fire station on Prospect Street, can the article be amended to say on Prospect Street or another piece of property?
Well, I don't think we can amend it.
No. I don't know if the select board could. I think I would be very happy with the Park Street.
But the select board sent us this.
Right.
So, we amend it here, it goes to town meeting, they're going to be looking at, I think we get amended on the floor, I guess, theoretically.
I didn't know if it was within our scope to be able to change it.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
Are we ready for a motion?
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll put a motion on the floor.
Do we have any more comments, discussions, anything else to say? No?
if
We have a motion on the floor?
I move that the Finance Committee approve Article 1 as written.
As written?
That's correct.
You mean on the version we have here that I referred to in the beginning that we received on November 5th?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how to word it, okay? I'm going to say that if you want, we can say approve Article 1 for a new fire station and for a fire department headquarters and emergency operations center at the 30 Freeman Street site. I don't know, how do you want to word it?
Well, the document that we referred to in the beginning to kind of put everybody on the same page is the one that Mr. Laurie sent out on the 5th.
Yep, I've got it in front of me.
It's called KP Doc X.
Yep.
I guess. So is that the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to be clear. Do we have a second?
Hello, second? Can't vote on it if you don't
Second.
second it.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. No other discussion?
Well, exactly what is the motion? Exactly what
Could
was
you
your
please
motion?
repeat the motion?
I'm not exactly sure how to word it, John. You might be better at
I
this.
mean,
than
are
They're basically saying that as presented to us.
Is your motion to approve Article 1?
Yes,
period?
that's exactly what it is.
All right.
And Eddie, you had a second on this?
No, Bob second.
Did Bob second?
We got a second, Bob.
Bob second, okay.
Well, I heard Eddie.
I heard Bob.
I heard
You guys want to arm wrestle or what? Okay, no further discussion, I guess? All in favor?
Two?
All opposed?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Say, ask for,
Any abstentions?
and one abstention. Okay.
Okay, that's Article 1.
212-1 fails. Yeah, 2 in favor, 12 opposed, 1 abstention.
This might be the time, Mr. Chairman, to have a majority report that says the sense of the Senate was that, yes, a fire station is needed, but there is insufficient information and insufficient data for the funding and the location, or several things. Just say several objections, none of which was opposed to a fire station.
Are you looking to make an added statement? Is that what you?
Yes. Because I think the town people should know why it did not carry, knowing that we need a fire station. And it's only for the matter of clarity and
Well, we can stay with the 212-1 with an explanation as to our recommendation, right?
Okay, so,
Right.
so, Elliot, you're saying perhaps write up a statement that this committee would then vote on, putting the statement in there as a sort of a sub thing?
if
It's
you
a
wanna-
report.
if you
A
wanna
I
take
think
a
we
vote,
need to
yes.
do it now.
It would be a report to town
We
meeting.
gotta get the votes
We
and
gotta get this
everything
done.
into the book, and we gotta have
Okay.
it in pretty soon.
How's the committee feel about that? Okay. Do you have an exact statement that you'd like to, and make a motion or something so we can?
The committee had felt that there was lacking information, but not lacking need for the fire station.
Have you got that, Dave?
It was although a fire station
Committee
is a
unanimously
necessity,
supports, the committee
information is
unanimously
lacking.
supports a fire station, but was lacking information necessary to approve this article.
Could we amend that to say the committee supports? Because we don't, it's unanimous until we vote.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Well, you need to have the statement so you can vote on it to put it in.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, we would know it was
I mean-
unanimous after we voted, that's all.
I'd like to call out the funding.
So
to be
let's
personal,
take,
you know.
Well,
I'd-
you
let's
can-
take the statement from Jess and take the statement from Elliot. Are they the same, or?
Well, I mean, essentially, you're saying that the committee as a whole likes the concept presented, but they did not agree with the funding, the bundling of all three, if you want, the property itself, the location itself. Pick your opposition to it. But I think well, we can do this. Does everybody agree with the concept that they provided with the redoing 2, building a new one, and creating the EOC at Freeman Street, right? I mean, that's,
I'm in
so,
agreement with the building of the new one, and I don't have that much of a problem with Prospect Street from a technical point of view. I think Mark Tisdale has been said, is really good at this. And if he comes back, especially with Mitch and company, who is going to be the civil engineer on the project, come back and say, we will make this work, then they will, in fact, make this work. Okay? So.
I think at that point, though, some of the people here had issues with the location, so then you're gonna start expanding it, and
I think
You know
if
what
it
I
was
mean?
more succinct, that the committee had several, recognizes the need unanimously, and several people had many, just say there was some sticking points that need to be straightened out before they could approve.
Dave, can you read back the original statement Elliot said?
Meeting had a lack of information, but the project did not have a lack of need.
And
You know,
and
that
Jess,
the need was there, but we couldn't vote for it based on a lack of information.
what was your comment, Jess?
I liked beginning with, the committee supports the project concept.
The project concept,
Yeah, the committee supports the project concept, but had concerns about the funding, the location, and the scope of the article, or the bundling of multiple items in the article, however you want to put that part.
And scope of phase 2 and 3?
Yeah.
Well, it's not the scope. I mean,
It's the
you
bundling.
presented the scope, but
Well, I said scope of the article for the sense that this
Our
one
recommendation
article
doesn't
is-
have to match the wording of a motion. It just has to be a message to the town meeting.
Yeah, but this is a separate
Right.
discussion to throw a statement in, like
Right.
Elliot had mentioned.
Yeah,
So
it
this
doesn't
isn't-
have to tie into the wording of a motion.
Okay.
Right, but I don't think they're going to understand what phase 2 and 3
How
are.
about if we just say, the funding, the location, and the bundling of multiple projects into one article?
You want to read that back, Dave?
Committee supports the project concept, except the funding method, the location, and the scope of bundling 3 phases.
No.
No.
Let's try again.
Take the scope out, and bundling of
Multiple
projects, and bundling of multiple projects.
Into one article.
so say that again.
Multiple, okay, bundling of multiple projects in one article, into one article.
But,
Hold on, into one article.
Got to read it back, yeah.
but I had one other problem with what he already read I want to correct before he reads it back to us.
Okay, well, we'll start this as a draft. Okay, so committee supports the project concept, except the funding method, the location, the bundling of multiple projects into one article.
Yeah, I guess I just was worried about the except. Yeah, exactly. We said that the committee supports the project
Oh,
concept.
the word except you don't like,
Correct. But has concerns about.
but has concerns.
And then you have the 3 things we shared our concerns about.
Would it be easy to just say multiple concerns?
Well, no, well,
They're going to want to know what they are.
we have to be able to put a stake in the ground
Yeah.
so that people
so
can put their
nail it
teeth,
down.
yeah, otherwise they're gonna be like, what are they talking
You've
about?
got the committee supports the project concept, but has concerns with,
Concerns about is what she told me,
Well,
but has
concerns
concerns about the location, funding methods, and bundling of multiple projects into one article.
With is a little
Bundling of
funding.
multiple
Wait a minute,
projects.
Wait a minute.
Dave, you're driving too fast. John's trying to write this down, okay?
About location, funding methods, and the bundling of
Multiple projects into one article.
You like that, Elliot?
Sure.
Okay. I'm asking because I know you originally come up with the idea, so I mean,
I think David's statement that it needs to be a little bit more specific so the town,
Okay.
people at the town meeting can say, okay, if we put this amendment in, then what, and so on and so forth, so.
I mean, I'm still very concerned that we don't even have an appraisal on the property. We don't have any type of environmental.
All of those are extremely.
Well, that would go into the location objection to the,
Well, if somebody told you they didn't like the location, does that tell you
Then,
that?
then we should say concerns about the property, not the location. If you want to just say about the property, we could say that.
If you put that in as the property, that encompasses not only the
That's
appraisal,
a
but
good
the
point.
location.
What?
okay, so,
Does it
If you
exclude
change the
anything?
concerns about the property as opposed to location.
Yeah, let's do that.
are you good with that, Jess?
Absolutely.
all right, so committee supports the project concept, but has concerns about the funding method, the property, and bundling of multiple projects into one article.
Yes.
That do it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have a motion somewhere on the floor here?
I think that's what just moved.
Do we have a
Okay,
second?
I'll second that.
That was
I'll
a
second
move.
that. So Jess, Dave seconds.
And this is just a statement to
Elliot
be
just
added.
said that to me.
Oh, he said it? Who seconded? Who seconded? Did somebody else, did someone second?
No, we don't second things on this side of the table.
I can't second my own motion.
Oh, that was you. Oh, that's right, that's
I'll
right.
second Elliot's motion.
Your second, I got it. Jess.
Elliot's
I-
motion, but your statement and your
Jess
second.
motion, Dave seconds. Okay. Jess, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Jess.
I'm going to stick with
John has a question.
Bob.
What did you just say? All right.
You'll need to have mercy on the chair. Like,
Time munches on.
poor man.
Okay, we get this ironed out yet? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
And this is just to put the statement in after the vote.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Okay, all in favor of inserting the statement as read?
Yay, 15 to nothing.
All opposed? Well, there we go.
See, you
Can I move we adjourn now?
See what happens when you work together?
Is that a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
I move we adjourn.
to adjourn this meeting.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Move my bowels, I think.
Chat, you're a yes.
That is
Have a
at-
great night.
That is at 10:43 Apple time.
Oof.